Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Dark Art Society podcast. I'm your host, Chet, and this week we do part 2 of the history of makeup effects with Ryan Peterson. We were going to do it in one part, and then that ended up taking too long. We only got to the 70s, from the 20s to the 70s, and then we thought we could finish it up in this current episode, and we ended up realizing most of the way through that we're going to have to do a part 3. So this episode mostly covers the 80s. We still left a few things out of the 80s that we will cover in the third installment. And then we also addressed some things we left out in the first episode. But anyway, it's a great conversation talking about makeup effects through the golden age of the 80s. So yeah, you got that to look forward to. If you're on YouTube, you can see where my dog chewed one of my dogs chewed my little foam piece here in my microphone. What's been going on with me? I did these 3 Lon Chaney studies. I am doing those to sell, and also I've been my friend Scum Choir, an artist at Scum Choir, spelled like it sounds, on Instagram and Patreon and everything. He's been helping me make clips to promote the podcast, shorts and reels and clips for YouTube. And he had this idea to clip out sections of the podcast and post time-lapse videos of my paintings. And they've been doing pretty well. So I painted these specifically for the footage to run under the clips from last week's episode, talking about the history of makeup effects and Lon Chaney and stuff. So we'll see how those go. I'll be posting those this week, I think. That's pretty much been what I'm up to. I've got some more studies I'm doing. Have a few more tool posters. Last few I got to get out. And that's pretty much it. We're getting ready to start working, designing my paintings, like figuring them out for my solo show. And I'm about 2 days late on that, or one day behind so far. So we'll see what I get done today, because I need to start working on that ASAP. Anyway, yeah, so if you want to support the podcast, we got no new subscribers this week, but if you support the podcast and subscribe to our Patreon, you get your name read on the air, you get the podcast a day early, and stuff I have planned in the future I haven't implemented yet. But if you listen often, it's only you could do it for only $1 a month, super cheap. I think with all the listeners, if everyone paid $1, it would be generating more income, and that's what keeps it going. So if you can, you just go to patreon.com/Dark Art Society, and you can join for just $1. And if you join at the $5 and above level, you get a percentage discount for Skull Shop, one of our sponsors, SKULLSHOPPE. You get a coupon code. They make amazing skulls. I use them in all my skull paintings. And we do have another ad from Beautiful Bizarre magazine. Now, I only take ads from companies I use or believe in, or organizations I like, and Beautiful Bizarre is one of those for sure. I love what they're doing. I got a piece in a group show they're putting on at Copro next month, that Cyclops painting, if you've seen it on Instagram, the skull with the chrysanthemum in the center. Yeah, so they're a great organization, and they asked me to promote the new Beautiful Bizarre Art Prize. So I'm going to read through this. This is the text they gave me, just to make sure I cover everything. So here goes. Entries are open for the 2024 Beautiful Bizarre Art Prize. Through this international art prize, you can showcase your work on a global scale and win big with $65,000 in cash and prizes up for grabs. That's pretty great. This is a non-acquisitive art prize, which means that you don't have to submit a physical artwork to enter. Instead, all you need to do is submit an image of the best work from your whole portfolio, even if it hasn't. It doesn't even matter if the work you enter has been sold. So that's pretty great too. With the addition of the new Emerging Artist Award, there's a total of 5 categories that you can enter. Traditional art, sculpture, photography, digital art, and Emerging Artist Award. You can enter from anywhere in the world. There's a brand new jury this year, so there's a whole new chance to become a finalist and a winner, as well as a whole host of cash and product prizes for all the winners. Winners will also be invited to exhibit in the Beautiful Bizarre magazine exhibition at Modern Eden Gallery in San Francisco, alongside 70 plus of the world's best contemporary representational artists in November 2024. Better yet, editor-in-chief Daniela Persay and her team guarantee that they look at every single entry. This is a great way to get on their radar for future opportunities too. And they also share many of the entries from now until entries close on 17th of July on their social media and online blogs. For more information and to enter, go to beautifulbizarreartprize.art. That's www.beautifulbizarreartprize.art. The Beautiful Bizarre Art Prize 2024 is sponsored by Musonium Gallery, Raymar Art Panels, 33PA, Yasha Young Projects, Werewolf Books, Modern Eden Gallery, Principal Gallery, Quarantine Events, Static Medium, Rosemary Brushes, Darticore Paints, and XP Pen Drawing Tablets. That's legit. So I would, if I was, advising someone, a young artist, I would absolutely tell them to enter this contest. Because Beautiful Bizarre is, kind of the only game in town for this, dark surrealism. And they do a really great job. They got great taste. I'm totally behind them. I love this, this group of people and what they do. And, so I'm all for it. So, okay, that's it. Let me see. Is there anything else I missed? No new names to read on today's podcast because no new subscribers, but hopefully you will step up if you're not subscribed. It's easy to join the Patreon too. We have a free 1 week, trial as well on there if you want to just try it out. But really, you support the podcast for the love. I support things that I love, things I watch, podcasts I listen to every day. I support financially, even at small levels. That's what it's all about. That's it. Okay, let's get on with it. Enough talking. Here we go with Ryan K. Peterson talking about the history of makeup effects, part 2. And I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Ryan. I just choked on my water. Went down the wrong pipe. Yeah.
Are you recording?
Yes, I'm going to leave it in.
Okay. I'm going to be coughing too.
Sorry, everybody. Hello. Okay, we're back. We're back with part 2 of the history of makeup effects. Did you have any feedback from the episode from anybody? Other than Mitch?
Let's see. Not specifically, just general, comments and things on.
Yeah, I think people like
it. I mean, I know I like this kind of discussion, so it's reassuring that other people do too. And so,
yeah, it went over well.
Good.
During the the live premiere, what's his name? Who was correcting me?
Rob Freitas.
Rob Freitas was correcting us on a few things we missed, like from the 70s, which was Alien, he brought up, which is a good one that we totally left out. We left, there was the Outer Limits, and there was some stuff from the Twilight Zone, so we should hit that stuff. Oh, and Zombie. So we should hit the stuff that we missed last time before we get into the 80s, which is going to be the big one.
Okay.
Do you agree?
Yes, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we go back, we left out William Tuttle, who did. I read that he was partnered with Charles Schramm, which is the guy who invented foam latex. I think Charles Schramm and Gordon Bow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Yeah.
we weren't corrected on that, so I think we're okay.
Yeah. But he did the Seven Faces of Dr. Lau, which was all these character prosthetic makeups in the early 60s. Yeah, were really good.
Oh, the Time Machine. Did he do that?
Time Machine, William Tuttle. Yeah, those are really amazing. The
Really cool.
Morlocks.
Yeah.
So he did the Time Machine, which is super classic. That's another example of the people they cast being important for the monsters. Like they cast these big fat guys, so they all had that kind of look. You know what I mean? It wasn't like they had a bunch of suit actors that were kind of like regular size and then did fat suits on them or something. They like used these real big dudes, which really added to their menace. Yeah, their menace and just the reality of it.
Gluttonous, eating the Eloy.
Yeah, that's such a great movie. That's the Time Machine is such a great movie. That's one I keep meaning to watch it again now that I'm on my old movie kick again. But also Twilight Zone. He did those amazing makeups in the Twilight Zone, the Eye of the Beholder makeups, which are total classics. The doctors and nurses with the weird...
Yeah, those are great.
The weird lip. Those are classics.
Did he do the To Serve Man episode?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
okay.
To Serve Man. I think he did all of the Outer Limits stuff for the most part, as far as I know. So he was great.
And I remember, just looking through that Making a Monster book, that his stuff just kind of stood out. William Tuttle's work was just, there was just it just looked really good.
Yeah,
it was kind of like not yet, Dick Smith quality, but the quality was there. It's kind of above the rest.
Especially for TV, especially that Twilight Zone stuff was, and I think the Twilight Zone stuff was like, they were doing stuff every week or something. They had to really crank stuff out from what I remember reading,
which is even more impressive.
Yeah. But all of his stuff was awesome. Okay, so we got William Tuttle. I don't know who did the Outer Limits. I should have checked that. The Outer Limits was another one that had a lot of weird, cool makeups. But we got to at least give it an honorable mention.
Such a good series.
Yeah,
so good.
we didn't mention It's Alive from Rick. It's Alive.
Well, we kind of did because I was.
Oh, that's right.
I was ignorant to the fact that he didn't give. It wasn't his firstborn.
Yeah, we did. Okay, right. But we didn't talk about the. Did we talk about the Incredible Melting Man?
No,
I don't think we talked about that. Was a big Rick job in the 70s with the melting
the melting heads,
different stage of melting man.
And there's a great fake head in there, and the Fury was the Fury in the 70s.
Oh yeah, the Fury that had a really great exploding body shot.
Yeah,
and the veins, the bladder veins.
And but It's Alive. Such an interesting design.
1978 was a Fury.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, so that's the 70s. What were you saying?
Oh, just the design of the baby was it's not something I would have thought of.
Yeah, it's super weird.
Muscly and the big head. it's scary. It's
Yeah,
intense. It
super.
could beat you up.
Oh yeah, when we were kids and that movie came out, everyone was really freaked out about it. It's just terrifying. I didn't see it for some reason. Like no one would take me to see it, and you'd only hear about it from other kids and from seeing the movie poster. I think there was like a weird little claw hand coming out of a bassinet or something. Just was, really disturbing. So yeah, so Rick was kind of like starting out in the 70s, and establishing himself as a. Hey, we talked about Star Wars and King Kong, right? Those were in the 70s, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
Star
76
Wars is
was King
definitely was.
Kong. And there's that great photograph. Oh, and he did a lot, to Live and Let Die. He did that great the fake head of
Oh, that's right.
what's his name?
Yaphet.
Godfrey Holder and Yaphet Kotto.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
those were really good. You could start to see Rick really kind of developing fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it was like Octoman was one of the early ones, and I mentioned that I think as a movie that I saw when I was a kid. I think I talked about it briefly.
Yeah, you referenced it.
Yeah, and it's so funny going to finding out, because it was one of those movies I saw. It was like a cheesy, cheap grindhouse movie that was on. They played on TV on Sunday afternoons or Saturday afternoons, and I remember seeing it when I was so young that it was just like disturbing to me. It's super corny now. It's like a super low budget movie, but it's funny, working to going to work at Rick's and then finding out he did Octoman. It was like, it's one of those things you see it and it freaks you out and you don't think much about it. But it's this memory in the back of your mind. And then you find out you don't even think that like some big makeup artist did it. That's popular, became this huge success because it's like,
wait a minute. When did you officially find out he did that?
I don't know. No, I probably found out earlier, but I remember working when I first got to work at Rick's. It was just like, it's just so funny that Rick Baker worked on this movie that had this huge effect on me, but it wasn't like American Werewolf in London, even though, these movies, of course, had an influence on me, but it was like Octoman, which is just so old. And, he made that suit out of like
foam latex, uncured, or it wasn't baked. So he and Doug Beswick sculpted, I think, on the final layer.
Right. They did like sheet foam.
Yeah.
And then, and then batches of foam latex,
which is amazing.
Wet foam latex. And then which is so smart and such a, I don't know, really thinking outside the box, unless that was a technique that was done, but I never heard of it before. I think I
hadn't either.
First time I'd ever heard about it. Yeah. Uncured. For people who don't know, when you make foam latex, you whip it up and it's like whipped cream and it gels. You inject it into your mold and then it gels. So it's no longer liquid. It's like, I don't even know how you would describe it. When it gels, it's like, it's no longer liquid, but it's still fluffy and you can kind of like push your finger in it and it'll take a fingerprint. It's like,
yeah, it's kind of like a cake. Air is introduced to it. And it's I don't get how it doesn't. So okay, he sculpted the unbaked foam. Then what does he do? How does it cure? Does it just cure slowly? As it's exposed?
I think they used like some big oven or they used heat guns or something to cure the area sections of foam latex.
Wouldn't they? Yeah. It has to be heated
Yeah. It has to be baked. So anyway, you can kind of press detail into foam latex after it's gelled. And so they kind of sculpted this whole suit this way because it was such a low budget film, and they couldn't afford to sculpt and make molds and stuff. But anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on. Yeah, it's very clever. I don't want to spend too much time on Octoman, but I was at that age when I saw it. I was young enough to where it kind of freaked me out. Look, if you watch it now, it's hilarious. It's like one of those hilarious B movies.
It still looks good though, his Octoman.
Oh yeah, it's cool.
There's the coloring and the eyes. Yep. You can tell there's a sure hand behind it. But what I wanted to mention was when did War of the Gargantuas come out?
Oh yeah, was got to be the 60s.
60s?
Gotta be.
That had a big impact on me.
Me too. Yeah, that was amazing.
And those, whoever, I'm not sure of the creature creator, but those what?
1970.
Oh,
wait a minute. No.
It might be
1966.
Right. Okay.
1966, sorry. This is wrong, whoever wrote this here. Yeah, 66, sorry.
Well, speaking of just scary features, whoever designed those suits nailed it.
Yeah.
That green gargantua is just scary.
Yeah.
And I know if we got a close-up of the sculpture in the suit, it would be really kind of crude. But boy, all you have to do is step back a little bit and everything's there.
Yeah, yeah.
And it scared me as a kid. And even the brown gargantua is scary.
It's super creepy.
But creepy. But I love that movie.
Yeah, that's a great one.
That's one that needs to be remade, but by Japan.
Yeah.
Not American. We don't need American version. We need another Japanese version.
Yeah, that would be that would be pretty amazing. That's one of those movies though. I don't think you could improve on it because it's got that weird 60s charm. The 60s cheesy, like I love the look of sets, those miniature sets of all those Godzilla movies that
I do too.
They don't look real, but they look cool. They're well done, but they look like miniatures, and it's like you just can't do that anymore, and you just can't capture it in that way anymore. I would watch a remake though. I would watch a remake.
But you know how much fun it would be to go on set every day if you're wearing one of those suits or just whatever, and like getting into the pool that's supposed to be the ocean and fighting and having a volcano, erupt behind. I mean, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, except for the suit part. Wearing the suit.
Getting heavy, soaking up water.
Oh man, when I wore that, I was the fruit vendor in Planet of the Apes. I wore that makeup in that suit, and I really had a newfound appreciation for suit people because it was brutal.
Now, real quick, tell me why it was brutal.
Oh, it was just hot. It was hot and heavy and uncomfortable because I was like, glue all over your face and just like, it just was really uncomfortable. I didn't realize how uncomfortable I would be. Like I just did it because I thought it would go to towards my SAG insurance. And then at the end of the day, they're like, oh, we're not, all the extras are getting a voucher. So, they basically screwed us out of it the time applying to our insurance. It was so lame, but at least I got to be the fruit vendor.
Yeah.
And I'm
Rick. Wasn't Rick right next to you in a suit? Yeah.
It was worth it because the scene is where I'm lighting a big bong, like a hookah pipe, and then Rick is a chimp. I'm an orangutan. Rick is a chimp, and he's like smoking it. I'm lighting the bong, and he's acting like, ooh, like he's all stoned. It was, that made it, good. That was worth all the suffering. I could say I was the orangutan that was getting Rick Baker as a chimp stoned in Planet of the Apes. Okay. Anyway, so I think so we talked about Dawn of the Dead, right? We didn't talk a lot about it though, because we talked about it
initially,
and I feel like Dawn of the Dead was a really important effects movie because it was so graphic and it was kind of establishing Tom Savini. I think because before that he had done Martin and some weird B movies and stuff.
So he hadn't done Friday the 13th yet.
Right, that was in the 80s.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And I heard that I may be wrong, but I heard that his budget for Dawn of the Dead was $10,000, which is like nothing for all that effects. So I want to see what the value of $10,000 is in 1977.
Just the amount of blood and squibs alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Let me see. So that would be okay. That would be $51,000 in 1977. Still nothing for a big, huge budget. All those zombies, all those appliances, so many gags, dead bodies, gut rigs, exploding heads. So he did that, you know, for no money. It was pretty amazing. But yeah, we talked about it a little, but you know, it had some really amazing bites. You know, you could see the kind of the light foam latex on some of the bites, like it was white, but
yeah, you can.
But I was kind of like, you know, okay, that's like that weird meat sometimes looks white, you know. You just kind of like rationalize
but it moved kind of, so it stretched like you could imagine skin stretching, and so that really sold the illusion.
Yeah. And it had that weird funky bright red blood we talked about too before people started kind of.
I kind of like that color palette though, because the makeups on the dead were just kind of like this gray. And so I kind of like that combination of the gray and that weird, I
did too. It's
red paintish kind of blood.
It definitely adds, like, again,
paint blood.
Yeah, it's that adds to the charm of it, but it doesn't necessarily look that real. Although in some shots it's not quite as bright, it seems like. But yeah, it was, what was it? Scotch made this blood. I think it was 3M blood. That company 3M, which makes like Scotch tape and a weird.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they made like this theatrical blood that he used, as far as I understand. And it photographed bright, apparently. But yeah, it does kind of add to the. George Romero said that he felt like it kind of added to the comic book vibe of the movie too. Yeah, you know,
it did. So was that blood kind of like the industry standard? Was that what they used maybe on? We referenced Little Big Man and Silent Running and all those films.
Yeah, maybe it was
because you know, what is it that Britain had a kind of standard Kensington gore?
Oh yeah,
that's their blood. And
Kensington gore.
I'm wondering if that was kind of the Hollywood standard at the time, or whatever.
I bet you it was, because it looked like all that phony blood from like the Omega Man and all that stuff.
Yep.
Okay, so the other thing we didn't mention, and we have to talk about the helicopter zombie quickly. That was kind of an amazing effect. The top of his head gets chopped off in Dawn of the Dead. Pretty good for what it was, where it's like a you know, it's funny because he does look like Frankenstein. I remember just when I saw it in the movie, I was like, okay, something's going to happen to the doctor's head.
Frankenstein.
His head's kind of square, but it really pays off.
It does.
You know, with they animated in the blades after, which looked totally real, the helicopter blades. And yeah, the way it was just, you know, pulled with monofilament pieces coming off, and the blood really comes down in a good way. And if you watch the DVD, you could see in another shot when he falls down, you could see all the tubing running out.
Oh, I don't have that on DVD, and I've been wanting to watch that again and to see it because I've enjoyed it so much. I love the music, everything about it. And didn't he kind of do some really clever stuff with like a machete with a portion removed? So it
cutting into the
hits a head and
then shooting it in reverse, pulling it out so it looks like it goes in. He was really good with stuff
to the ear and
yeah, and a lot of that stuff. I'm a super Dawn of the Dead nerd. That's like that's my big movie as a kid that got me into effects. That, like I was saying, that and the Howlings. But I know just about everything about that movie, and a lot of that stuff was kind of made up on the fly too. Like the screwdriver gag, I think, was a straw painted silver, and you know, a tube run up the arm. It's like a fake screwdriver and pumping blood out through the straw into the guy's ear. But apparently they just like, it was this low budget production. They had the mall, and they just kind of lived in that mall and just were making stuff on the fly, you know, just like kind of a student film almost, but with a budget, a little bit of a budget.
Yeah, Tom Savini seems to be very another very resourceful kind of guy on set.
Definitely. You know? Yeah, for sure. Because you think about in the 70s, you know, especially in the 70s, the knowledge just was, you know, when we were getting into it, it was hard to find information on it. But I can't imagine in the 70s, it must have been really difficult.
I remember Tom Savini talking about when he worked on Creepshow, which we'll need to talk about. Mm-hmm. He's he had to do Fluffy, and he literally just called up Rob Bottin and asked him about how to do it, you know, based just on Tanya's Island.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And so Rob helped him through, you know, talked him through it, and he did it.
Wow.
You know, and it looked great.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Wow, that's cool. Okay, I keep thinking there's more Dawn of the Dead stuff, but I guess not. But we can't get too hung up on this because we have so much to get to. But two more things. Zombie, 1979, which is the Italian ripoff of Dawn of the Dead, which is amazing. And it had some great effects in it by Giannetto de Rossi.
He deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah.
That was, like we were saying, that splinter in the eye effect alone was as good as anything that had been done at that time, and really well edited. I mean, they sold that effect really well.
Yeah, yeah. It's such a weird movie because there's so many. It's just like there's so much cheesiness about it, but there's also stuff that's really kind of sophisticated. Like the cinematography is really great. Like the cinematographer is like a famous cinematographer, Italian cinematographer. I think he worked on spaghetti westerns and stuff. I forget the name of him, but you know, some of those shots are beautiful. Like some of the creepy village scenes where the zombies are just starting to walk and the crab walks by and it's like windy and there's a donkey. It's just like really, you could tell it was like an artistic eye shot a lot of that stuff. Like it's a really good looking movie in that way for a low budget film. I guess it's like it was low budget. But people were trying, you know?
Yeah. But I'm so glad now that you mentioned zombie. I've never seen a sequence like the zombie attacking the shark scene.
Oh yeah, that's incredible.
That's I think one of the best sequences ever.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's you don't want to know too much about how they did it, but I've never seen anything like that before. Ever.
It's insane. I mean, it's like
insane and wonderful.
Yeah, it is. It's like
my
what
goodness.
A crazy idea. Yeah, obviously drugged shark. You know, it's a drugged shark, I'm sure.
Yeah, and they also I heard fatigued it by like I think I don't know how they did it, but they wore it out. Maybe they just drugged it too. But think about that actor who had to go and do that scene, how he woke up in the morning.
Yeah, right.
He probably just didn't think about how the day was going to proceed. Because
it was a stunt guy.
It
was a stunt guy.
Yeah, but still. I got to do what? What?
Yeah, rips his arm off, you know, bites his arm off. And it's so strange, too. Remember, he's like kind of walking backwards. The shark's coming towards him, and it's so strange.
Really weird. Yeah, it's so
It's very surreal. It's like a weird, surreal dream image, you know?
It might be one of my favorite sequences of all time.
Yeah.
Just because it's my goodness. It's just so out there. It is. It's very dreamlike, surreal.
That's what movies are made for, is to see things
Yes.
like that, just like, this is insane. But
Yes.
Zombie has, I love the Zombie. I love it. I watch it pretty often. It's one of my regular movies that I watch from time to time, and music's amazing. But as far as the makeup effects, it's got some good gore stuff, kind of realistic looking gore stuff. It's got some bad makeup effects. There's a couple of shots that are just like, man, really bad. Like exploding heads. Like they're ripping off Dawn of the Dead. That's what Italian B movies did. They would rip American horror movies off that made good money. And so it's like there's exploding zombie heads at the end. I don't know if you remember, but when it's with the church, or not, it's like a chapel kind of, where they're set up the little medical center. The zombies are attacking. It's on fire, and there's a couple of like zombie head explosions where they get shot with a shotgun, and they're just terrible. Like, it's just like really bad. But I'm sure they had less money than Tom Savini had.
Oh, well, that classic iconic zombie that with the worms, that it's interesting. That photo is actually, I think, the most flattering.
Yeah.
Because in the movie it's cool.
Yeah.
But that photo just like captured some kind of magic.
Yeah, really.
With that, because it's a indelible image.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of the zombie makeups are kind of like bad, but technically, it's like they had no money. And I think that what I read is a lot of it, they were putting like mud on them and stuff, or like clay, and just letting it crack and pouring blood on them and stuff. But it's creepy. It's still effective and creepy.
Yeah.
Some of them don't have ears, where it's just like they put a bald cap on. There's just no ears. It's kind of funny, but also weird and cool, and creepy still. So I like, and it's like, it's also the way that zombies walk and act is really different. Their eyes are closed for the most part. They're walking around with their eyes closed, and they're like walk really slow, like shuffle along, and then they strike really fast, like a snake or something, which is really another weird thing to do. But there's some memorable zombies in it though, like the one you mentioned, the maggot or worms in the eye, and there's that one where the one eye is looking, it's a woman, I think. One eye's looking in and one eye's looking straight ahead, and it's obvious like the person either had a messed up eye, or they could do that with their eye, and they utilize that, and they just kind of pour blood on them. Really, like, they've got this distorted, like, it's real close in the camera. And one,
I don't remember that. Yeah. I'll have to recatch that.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But and again, all the stuff though in the context of the film totally works, and it's classic. Regardless, regardless, it's kind of classic, and I loved it.
I agree.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, the last thing we got to mention before we get out of the 70s, Alien. Which I thought was 80s.
Let's not forget The Brood and Prophecy.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah, but let's talk about Alien, because it's
okay. Yeah, it's Giger. It was Giger.
It's a groundbreaker. Yeah. I've got a list of movies and stuff, and some of them I've highlighted as groundbreaking, and Alien is totally groundbreaking.
Yeah, it's the probably first great creature suit, I think. Well, no, that it's.
Well, like you said, it's like the Creature from the Black
Creature Lagoon. From the Black Lagoon.
So it's on that level.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's
it changed the shape of a monster head in horror movies forever after that. That weird long head and the face being right here and the head going back is really, or it's more like that kind of. It's really weird, a really weird head shape.
And, and this, the way Ridley Scott filmed it, due to the limitations, also was fantastic. There's a shot of it when it's just kind of doing this with its arms before it kills, I think Yaphet Kotto or something, or right after killing Yaphet Kotto. And that was so abstract and weird. And Ridley Scott in not Prometheus, but the other one that he did right after it, almost duplicated the alien on a spaceship, whole third act, and it was over animated. It was a great example of how more isn't necessarily better. And with the original Alien, there's limitations, so they didn't show it a lot. Literally just in quick inserts, and it was just fantastic. And you could kind of, even as a little boy, when I was 9, you could kind of hear a buzz. You could kind of feel a buzz. I didn't even hear it, but you could feel something special was happening with Alien. And there was that great book, it was a pictorial, it's kind of like a graphic novel, but using actual photos from the movie, a book that was available. Do you remember that? It was Alien, and it was just stills from the movie chronologically depicting the plot, the whole
cool.
movie. But what was so amazing was Ridley Scott's eye, because every shot in that movie is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And the darks, he let there be plenty of shadows. And so you throw an alien in that, context. And it's just, I remember Tom and Alec at ADI mentioning that they had access to the original Alien costume when they were, I can't remember if it was Alien 3 or what, or Aliens, but they got access to the original Alien costume and were kind of surprised at how rough it was.
Yeah.
And they even said things like, he put like, I can't remember if this is correct or not, but just various odds and ends glued to it.
Yeah,
even like they said like macaroni or something. I could be wrong about that, but I heard macaroni. But it just goes to show how you don't need to have total refinement for it to work. You just have to light it properly, and all the broad strokes have to work. And nothing does it as well as that Alien design. It's amazing.
Yeah, the design, it's the overall design, and casting a tall, thin guy. Also, I'll tell you, I don't care for when monsters in suits like overacting. Like, it seems like every monster goes like
especially now.
Yeah, now it's like more of a modern thing and it's like, they always cock their head and stuff. It's like the Alien was more like, I haven't seen it in a long time. I'll be honest. I haven't seen it in probably 10 years. But my impression of the way it moved, it wasn't any of that over exaggerated movement. It was more like
it stood up. It swung its arms to get Yaphet Kotto. And the only time it ever did something unusual was, like I said, when it was kind of had its arms up. But that I don't feel was overacting or over performance or anything.
Yeah, no, that's
kind of neat.
It felt like subdued, which is the
subdued
creepy creatures. I think are the most creepy are like more of the subdued performances. I don't know. It's creepier for some reason.
Well, and nowadays, if you see any kind of digital monster, and this is a real pet peeve I have, is that it's like if it was being directed, its performance being directed, it's always the same thing. Roar at the camera.
Yeah.
Roar at the camera. It's like every damn digital monster I see has to roar at the camera.
Yeah.
Like that's it's only emotion.
Yeah, angry. Oh, I'm so mad. Yeah, that's what Mitch and I used to talk about that a lot at Rick's. It's like every monster is so mad. Like, I'm so mad. Like anger really isn't as scary as I just anger isn't that scary to me. It's more like weird, creepy, a blank look on a face of a creature is scarier and creepier to me than like
Yes, Shin Godzilla. Have you seen Shin Godzilla?
No.
Chet, it's my favorite Godzilla movie.
Really?
Because when it's revealed, and it's revealed in stages, because it's still kind of developing. And so when you first see it, it's just kind of rolling on its belly. It doesn't have any legs yet, maybe hind legs. And then it just gradually evolves into something that is totally foreign. And it's blank. It never really kind of seems to emote anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then when and that made it, like you said, interesting.
Yeah.
And kind of unnerving. And like, because you realize what you're dealing with is a hyper object manifested. And a hyper object being something that you can't comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
And so here you're something and it's made physical right in front of you, and it's giving you no hint at what it's going to do. And that it was so refreshing, because even some of the Godzilla movies now, the American versions always have the roar at the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so sick of that. And King Kong and Skull Island, but Shin Godzilla is like, it was such a breath of fresh air. You really need to see that.
What year? Yeah. What year is this? Is this like
it came out like 5 years ago?
Really? Okay. Mm-hmm. I haven't been keeping up.
Great design.
Any of the Godzilla movies.
Well, this one's the one you need to see.
Okay.
The latest one, Godzilla -1, has been very popular, but I'm still partial to Shin Godzilla.
Have you seen it? The latest one?
Yeah.
Because I heard it was good. Someone told me like it's not dumb.
No,
like it's a pretty good script.
Well,
I think that's the one.
I'm going to hold off.
Okay.
I was so critical in the last episode. I've got to pick and choose more this time, because I don't want everyone to be mad at me. They're going to think I'm like Mr. Contrarian.
Yeah.
But I liked it, but it still wasn't Shin Godzilla.
Okay. I'll watch it.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We need to get into the 80s, because this is where it all started happening.
Real quick.
Oh, sorry.
Prophecy, because just for me, because it may not have had the effect on me. And we talked about it in the past episode, but I want to just do a shout out to Tom Berman.
Yes.
Because real quick, the monster wasn't what was finally created. So it was literally like a composite of various creatures in one. So I think like a bird talons on the hands, like bat wings. I mean, a weird kind of composite of disparate kind of features of various animals. And so that would have been a really hard creature to design. And I don't think anyone could have really pulled it off. But what Tom Berman did, I had never seen anything quite like that. So Newsweek came out with the Summer of Fear issue, and it talked about Dawn of the Dead and Alien and Prophecy. And it was the first time I saw a picture of the monster, because all the teaser trailers, it didn't show you anything, and you kind of imagine like a Bigfoot kind of creature.
Mm-hmm.
And it just the title, Prophecy, the monster movie. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I had no idea what the monster looked like. So when I looked at that Newsweek and saw the Prophecy bear creature, it's like, what the hell is that? It looked like almost like a pig.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I was like, and it unsettled me. And then when I saw it, I remember, we talked about how I was totally traumatized, but Tom Berman, and Jim Cagle was there and worked on it. I mean, I think, it's been maligned, but I think it looks, some shots are a bit dodgy, but it's scary. I think it's effective to me. It was effective to me then, and it's effective to me now. And this wasn't the 80s. This was still kind of, and it was a suit with a big animatronic head on top of the performer.
Yeah.
And then they had a puppet they had gore. It had a lot of stuff, and I thought all of it was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to find pictures of it because I haven't seen it in forever.
Oh,
Probably since the 80s.
you need to revisit it.
I
It's
know.
it's not a great movie, but there's some great moments, and yeah, it was just really impactful to me.
Yeah, I mean,
Really
the thing I
impactful.
remember about it was hit the guy getting hit.
Yeah, the little boy getting hit when the sleeping bag.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that I found that
yeah.
really disturbing. That was on the commercial, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can't see any pictures. There's like no good pictures of it.
But
Oh,
Jim
wait a minute.
Cagle, oh
Okay.
yeah, Jim Cagle sculpted a lot of those.
Really?
Yeah. And just a
Wow.
young guy. So he's such a talent.
Wow.
But I think Stan even helped paint the suits, and I mean, there were a lot of all the major people were working on it, and I think even at one point Rick was bidding on it.
Hmm.
But so yeah, and I just want to defend it because I know
Yeah.
a lot of people attack it, but I'm still I still think it's pretty
I'm
cool.
I'm gonna watch it because I can't remember. I mean, I have a vague notion of what it's like, and I always
Hmm.
thought it was kind of cool. I
Yeah.
never, but I don't remember ever thinking
A
it was.
great, I mean, the suit had the roaring head mechanism worked. It had a blinking eye
Hmm.
mechanism, and I thought it was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of there's another one from the 70s. What's the one that's kind of like it's a really cool story, but suffers from some really bad visual effects. Not, but the makeup effects are kind of good. What's that movie with Tony Curtis? The Native American
Oh yeah, the Manitou,
Manitou.
Manitou,
Yeah,
Tom Berman again.
yeah, yeah. And that
He
was
was really he was on a roll there,
right, and
and
that had
I saw that
really cool
recently.
effects.
Yeah, I saw that recently, and it excuse me when it delves into visual effects, it's kind of bad, but yeah, the
Right.
makeup effects were really cool.
Yeah, yeah, and also that's a movie that should be remade because the idea I read the book after this. It's like the story is actually really good, and it's a cool idea. It's just like the movie didn't live up to the idea of the story. I think
Help me remember the basic plot.
it
What was it?
it was I'm I'm forgetting now, but I went through this period where
I should
because
remember it. I just saw it.
it's like yeah, I'm blanking on even the story, but at the time it's like it's it's something about bringing this demon through a portal,
Mm,
and it uses this like a Native American shaman they're trying to stop it from coming through. I
hmm.
know it has
That's
some
right.
like like the dwarf monster comes out of that lady's neck or the back, I
The
think.
back. Yeah.
And there's something really cool about it. Like it has to do with kind of the spirit world and them trying to cross over.
Hmm.
And there's like a psychic that's that they get involved in the beginning. It's just like a cool. You could. Oh, it's yeah. It's like it's kind of like demons, Native American demons, kind of trying to cross over
Mm.
into our reality or something. It's okay. I'm not explaining it well, but at the time I saw this movie and I was talking to Binky about it, and we were both going like, "This would be a great movie to remake." Because I'm kind of the opinion that remakes should only be good ideas that but the film did not live up to the idea or the script. There's certain movies that like, they're good. They have a good core, but the movie didn't live up to it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of
I
movies
hear,
I could name.
I hear even Prophecy could kind of
Right.
qualify because if you read the book, I mean, David Seltzer's a really good writer, and he wrote the screenplay and then he simultaneously adapted the book.
Hmm.
And there, I tell you, Chet, there's some moments in that book that had they been able to adapt it to the screen, it would have been some of the scariest stuff ever put to film. It
Really?
still scares me. I still read it, and I'll have to find a copy
Damn,
and mail it to you because
yeah.
it's really you will never go camping and without thinking about these moments and
Yeah, I got to
yeah.
read that. Okay.
But yeah, the Manitou
Yeah. So another
was
70s.
yeah, the guy he put some cool contact lenses and the sculpture was effective
Yeah.
and yeah, that's well
Creepy.
done. Well
Yeah.
done. Very creepy.
Okay, and then you wanted to mention The Brood, David
Well, the Brood is
Cronenberg.
almost like a strange companion to the Manitou because the premise is so cool in the Brood in that uh, a psychologist or a therapist. Oh shoot, I'm going to be like you and not be able to explain the plot. But basically, emotions manifest themselves physically, and it's
Oh,
almost
that's
like this
right.
therapist
Mm-hmm.
played by Oliver Reed has a kind of uh, an approach to therapy in which he to purge the person of these negative emotions. It almost like it manifests itself
Right.
physically, kind of like breaking a fever, get it out of your system.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes awry in one of his patients, and then the anger she has at being divorced or whatever. And this was actually Cronenberg, I think, one of his most personal films because he was going through a divorce at the time
Oh,
and
wow.
experiencing a lot of rage, and then he just simply therapeutically put it to paper.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was mad at his ex-wife, and there was a custody battle, and all of that's in the movie. But in the movie, his ex-wife actually starts her rage starts manifesting itself as this brood of children
Mm-hmm.
that kill anything that makes her mad or upset.
Yeah.
And these designs on these little brood are so creepy.
Yeah.
Can you
Super
remember
creepy.
that? How
Yeah.
creepy they were? They're like
Kind of like little old men, right? Sort
yeah,
of.
albino,
Yeah.
little men with just just really creepy. But that's one of my favorite Cronenberg
And
films.
the weird, the way she births them is really
Yes,
gross and disgusting
really gross.
and well done. I don't know who did the effects on that. Was that
Oh, good
that's
question.
yeah.
And that actress who played the wife was so good. She's sitting there doing all this stuff, peeling the baby out of the placenta
Yeah.
and starts licking it clean, and then she stops, and her husband's watching this, horrified. Oh, do I disgust you? So good. And it's like, yeah, you do. This is horrific.
I
It's a
saw that.
great movie.
I saw it in the theater. I saw that movie
You
in the
did?
theater when it came out.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that would have gave me nightmares.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
1979, so I was probably 12 years old.
that was a big year. That was a big
Yeah.
year. Alien, The Brood, uh, yeah, Dawn of the Dead, Prophecy, all that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good time. Okay, now let's get into the 80s.
Okay.
Okay, it's already 50 minutes and we haven't even gotten into the 80s. We're going to have to do a part
Well, now
3.
at least we can move on and we can
Yeah.
feel like we've covered most of the bases.
Yeah,
So
pretty much everything. Okay. So where do you start with the 80s? Like so the 80s were really the golden age of makeup effects. We're in
let's
the
start with the
80s.
Elephant Man because then
Okay,
that's kind of
yes.
segues into what we talked about last
Yes.
time with
Okay.
Eraserhead.
Yes.
Did you see the Elephant Man in the theater?
Yeah, I did.
Tell me about it. How you felt?
You know what? So I was 13, I guess. I thought the makeup was amazing. I think the story was probably a little too over my head or something. I think I was kind of like mesmerized by the makeup, to be honest, to
Yeah.
really get involved in the story. Because it's because the story now it's like kind of amazing, really emotional. But like when you're a 13-year-old boy, you're not into emotional stories.
No.
You're into like that's a cool looking monster. So it was really more about seeing that makeup, which I thought was it still holds up as an incredible makeup.
And Christopher Tucker didn't have much time.
I know.
So this is where I want, I kind of wanted to tie it into what Eraserhead did to the makeup, the Elephant Man makeup, because David Lynch was unable to complete a successful makeup, they had to start from scratch, and so they were
Yeah, isn't that
scrambling.
crazy that he was
Yeah,
trying to
and
make it? Just the fact that David Lynch thought he could do that makeup is kind of like, I could
you
see.
know what? More power to him, though. That just goes to show he just goes for it.
Yeah, yeah. It's a
It was
little naive though.
very nice. Yeah, yeah,
But it's like he's kind of like, I think he's a genius. David Lynch is a genius,
he is.
but it's like it's kind of something a genius might do that have be such kind of a visionary that you think you can do it using these techniques maybe that you've never tried out before, and you don't realize there's a whole system to make this stuff that already exists. You don't need to kind of reinvent the wheel. So who knows what he, like it's like molding a dead cow fetus or whatever. There's ways of getting something better without.
No, you're totally right. You're totally
so
right.
I could see him like being this kind of innovative genius trying to do it, but
not practical in the least.
Yeah.
But what because he used up all that time, and they were already filming certain scenes and just waiting for it to be completed, so it almost killed the production.
Right.
And so they had to call Christopher Tucker, who I think it was some like amazing amount of time that he had to do it, like 6 weeks or something. And so
crazy.
sometimes, and this is what's happened to me, sometimes the most successful work is the most arduous. The process to completing it is sometimes really, really difficult, whether it's stress or your whatever. Kind of like Steven Spielberg and Jaws. It's almost like you have to go through these really severe birthing pains, and that's when something really special can happen. And so that happened with Christopher Tucker. Lived in his studio, didn't get any sleep, he said, and the whole production was on his shoulders.
Right.
And so for him, because of unfortunately maybe the naivete of Lynch, but it all worked out. It was all necessary. And I think there's stuff on that makeup that I think is still, I mean, just some of the little details that Christopher Tucker put into it kind of look like broccoli or cauliflower.
Yeah.
And the hair work was so finely laid.
The hair work was great.
And how he chose to solve that problem with the big head, doing a hard, kind of shell piece that goes on first, and then the facial foam latex appliances go on top of that. And a lot of people have done Elephant Man makeups, and they look, since then, and they look beautiful. But I can't honestly say that they surpass what Christopher Tucker did. And then also the black and white photography, I think, really helps too. He did have the benefit of the black and white photography. I've never seen a color picture of it. Have you? Or I don't even know if one exists. No, there is. It's out there. I bet you could Google it right now.
Really?
And it still looks good. It looks great.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. It's amazing. It's an amazing makeup. And,
the body appliances at the end, when you see the reveal of the body appliances, those are amazing. And then the kind of the way he painted it was totally believable. I mean, there's like these weird patches of darker skin next to lighter ones. It almost looked like vitiligo or whatever. That condition.
Do you think that they in some ways used casts of his body and clay pores or anything like that?
That's possible, because if you look at those pieces, they don't look sculpted.
Yeah, and it's like, how
question.
Effects sculpting, I don't think got amazing until maybe the late 90s. I mean, like Mitch, amazing, totally real, like Mitch Devane, totally realistic sculptures. They didn't. Well, I mean, like as far as like that attention to kind of perfection and detail, like if you look, even the Thing, which we'll talk about, which is was like the pinnacle of 80s horror golden age makeup effects. That stuff was still kind of, you know, it wasn't super detailed, you know?
No.
And I feel like it, you know, I could be wrong. Maybe it was like starting in the 90s, because even those Greystoke apes, you know,
Yeah.
those were kind of rough. I mean, great sculptures and everything, but like a certain level of detail wasn't expected, I don't feel like, until a certain period.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I'm kind of, you know, and you and I have talked about it, and I'm more of the that 80s approach, you know, seeing you know, because we've both seen Rick's Greystoke sculptures, and they are incredibly, what is it? They're not overly refined at all. Like
they're beautiful sculptures. They're just not super overly refined.
They work so well. And so I'm kind of mixed about it. I think, you know, it's all about prioritizing and stuff. So I'm more excited about the non-detail. But you're absolutely right. It wasn't expected.
Well, you were never a detail guy.
No,
you know, you're a
couldn't do it as
guy.
well as you or me.
No, it was like,
so yeah. But I think it's expected now.
Yeah. Right. There's like a maybe I'm not thinking of the right term, but there's like a standard now, like a base standard that I think because of people like Mitch and Kazu and the really amazing kind of detail, super realistic detail sculptors, kind of pushed it to that level, and it became the standard. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I agree with you. Yeah.
And you know, it might have something to do with like the way the film stock was in the 70s and 80s. It was more grainy. You could get away with it, and like as high definition cameras came into use, maybe you know, it's picks up stuff like that. I don't know, but I don't know what we were talking about though.
Well, so we're still on the Elephant Man.
Oh, Elephant Man. Yeah.
About, how the body.
Yeah. Okay. This is my point I never got to. As far as I know, Chris Tucker was not doing Mitch Devane level sculpture work in 1980 or 1979 when that was happening. So it makes me think, I wonder if, did they get lucky the way it was photographed, or did they use like body casts and kind of blended it into the sculptures somehow?
That is a really good question. So
I don't know anybody doing that level of work back then.
Well, he did have a copy. He did have the plaster death cast of Joseph Merrick in his studio as reference. So whether or not he took alginate casts off of it or whatever and incorporated clay pours into it,
I wonder.
He could at least he probably at least tried to replicate what was right there.
True. Yeah,
but it's a very good question, because if you look at some of the body appliances, they just look real.
Yeah.
And so there's another David Lynch movie mystery that I would like to get answered.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite makeups of all time.
Yeah, it's great. Really is. It is. It's a classic. Amazing. Yeah, amazing. Okay, we gotta keep it moving, I guess. This is
okay. So Friday the 13th, real quick.
Okay,
it was kind of like the introduction, because I remember my parents. It's amazing they put up with this, but I had my Crayola clay that I would do all my sculpting in, and I remember doing fake heads of like the Kevin Bacon body and sticking Q-tips from behind and poking through the neck and being really excited about, look, Mom, Dad, and doing that. And I think they were just kind of like perplexed. What the hell? But I was really excited about Friday the 13th. And so it had an impact on me. And I know you talked about it before compared to Halloween, and I agree with you. But it did kind of open the door and usher in a whole kind of
It was a gore movie. Friday the 13th had no makeup effects in it, as far as I know. I'm sorry. Halloween had like no makeup effects, and it's like Friday the 13th was a makeup effects kind of movie. It's like you watch for the effect. You know, that it was more about the gross out than even the scares, really. I think, but I mean, it was about suspense and all that. But you know, part of it was seeing these amazing effects, and that was Tom Savini again establishing himself as this gore master guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
There, wasn't there like, I remember seeing the makeup of Jason at the end for the dream sequence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wasn't there like two versions? I remember seeing one that didn't look anything like the one that was in the movie. Unless it's just,
I think they were the same because I don't think he had time to do two versions. Maybe the one that you see, there's a quick flash of Jason drowning, and it's kind of a dreamy flashback, and then the one you see a little more clearly at the end during that that weird kind of sequence at the end, that reveal. He's covered with seaweeds, and I think he had dentures in too.
Yeah, that's it.
And so it looked a little bit different, but it was, really effective, I thought.
Yeah, I thought the kind of messed up seaweed looking version at the end looked really pretty cool and well done. But what were the effects? There was the arrow through the neck. There was like an axe in the face, right?
A slit throat at the beginning.
That was kind of like the
first time I'd seen that.
Yeah, which is,
and you know what? What's kind of weird is I did kind of go through a blood fetish.
Really?
Yeah.
Even you, huh? I would never thought you went through a gore fetish.
I remember I had a fake, latex hand that I bought at like a novelty store, and it was hollow. And so I'd go upstairs in the bathroom, and where I had some privacy, and I'd get this fake blood, and I'd pour it down into one of the hollow fingers, and then I just kind of, all right, and then I'd get like a little knife and poke it and get really excited seeing the blood come out. And it was all because of Friday the 13th. And also that fake hand was also good, and I would blow into it and it'd kind of inflate like the the TC Quist hand in The Howling, when it gets chopped off and it starts bubbling. I try to duplicate that. So that hand, I got a lot of mileage out of that. But that blood fetish phase didn't last very long.
Yeah, I went through it too. I mean, I probably lasted longer with me. I think it's like, it's a little boy thing, it's a young boy thing. There's something, I don't know, exciting about it because it was really fun, and it's like I'm not into it anymore, but I was back then. I remember one time me and my friend made a guillotine. And I got a Goofy doll and filled it with blood, like a Goofy toy, Mickey, Disney, and filled it with blood, and then would cut the head off. It was like we used a lawnmower blade for the guillotine, and it was pretty kind of a tall guillotine, kind of dangerous.
Wasn't that exciting and satisfying?
It was just like, blowing car model kits up with firecrackers and burning them and stuff like that. But I guess the whole gore, to me, gore started with Dawn of the Dead. That was when my gore face started. So that would be like I was probably 10 or 11 years old. So
around the same time.
Yeah.
Because 79 and 80 when those things.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of when the gore thing kind of started getting in the mainstream of films. And so I went through that whole thing too. I'd made cut off fingers and just all kinds of, rotted heads, and it was fun stuff. But okay, what else do we have for
Altered States?
Oh yeah, Altered States. That's a great one. And I saw that one in the movie theater too.
Ooh, I wish I had.
Yeah, it was weird. I remember the sex scene was so uncomfortable because I went with my dad. And it was like, I don't know, because they're screwing in front of a heater, I think, a space heater.
My cousins, we rented it, and my cousins were there, and my grandparents, and for some reason we rented it, and it's like, well, you could see where this is going. So as the adults are downstairs talking, I snuck the video on, me and my cousins watched it. And we were like, oh, we were only like 10. And I was both excited for the effects and the nudity. So it was really impactful to me. And then my mom found out, and then in the morning she goes, "Ryan, we're really disappointed you watched that movie," and I felt really sheepish and bad. But it's those effects are still great.
Oh yeah.
Those bladder effects are really, really cool. And that kind of is when the for me the blood stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you see these bladders and how innovative that was, it's like then I was getting excited for that.
That's a good point, because that was my experience with The Howling. You know, it was like first was into the gore, and then I saw The Howling, and it was the same thing. The bladders, and we talked about The Howling a little bit last time. That was the one where I started getting more into creature, the idea of doing creature makeup effects over gore stuff. But Altered States was great. It's so funny to look back at it now, because it's, you know, totally about tripping and
Yeah.
you know, it's psychedelic states and spirituality kind of, and, you know, stuff that I'm interested in as an adult. And at the time I wasn't, you know, wasn't registering even. I was just there for the monsters and the weird distorted guys.
Yeah.
You know, that William Hurt or John Hurt, is it, which is which Hurt? William Hurt with his arm like that.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And that was Dick Smith, of course. That was a great idea.
You know, and credit goes to William Hurt for being willing to put himself through that.
Yeah.
And do you remember seeing interviews with William Hurt? He was so taken by Dick's perfectionism.
Yep.
That he inspired him throughout his career.
Yeah.
He used that as like a template for quality. Just, this is Dick Smith.
Right.
And so I think it shows that he was willing to kind of help Dick Smith in any way possible, because he was so enamored with that kind of level of perfectionism.
Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah, I think
we just lost William Hurt last year. And
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So the bladder effects.
Do you know the William Hurt farting story?
No.
Someone told me, I think I've told it on the podcast before. Damn, how did he die? He was so young. Prostate cancer.
Early 70s.
Damn. Yeah. Apparently he was going through a phase. This is from someone I knew. This is what's good about getting into the 80s and 90s, is we can start talking about our experiences in the film industry. But so someone who worked with him on some movie said he was going through this phase where he wouldn't hold anything in. Like it was, so if he had to fart, he would just fart and not even react. And apparently he'd just be standing talking to production in a group and just totally let a fart rip and just not react at all to it. Isn't that weird?
Oh my goodness. Like Leslie Nielsen.
I don't remember who told me that, but
well, he was a real kind of method actor.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, he was probably exploring some kind of current fad or methodology. Yeah. So a bit asocial, but I think a lot of those method actings were.
Hey man, it's natural, dude. Okay.
But he's a great actor, so it worked.
Yes,
you know?
Yes. Definitely. I love him in broadcast news.
Mm-hmm.
You ever seen Broadcast News?
Oh,
Albert Brooks.
Yeah, it's a wonderful movie.
That's such a great movie.
Yeah, Albert Brooks and Holly Hunter. Yeah, it's a great movie.
That's an excellent movie. Anyway, it's no makeup effects in it though. So we, you know, the other thing we didn't mention about Dick, he was doing all of that stuff in his basement.
I know.
Which I know people that have visited his basement. He did The Exorcist. He did all of his effects stuff, as far as I know, he did out of that basement. The Hunger, all these huge movies, Little Big Man, and it was a tiny little basement from what I've been told. Like everything was super organized, and it was a really small room, which is kind of crazy.
That is crazy, because in Altered States, there's full body sculptures.
I know. Wow. I can't imagine working in like a little.
He would have to be very organized and stuff, but how magical. I wish I could have, you know, I know like Mark Viniello, I think, said he was able to see that Larchmont basement, and yeah, it was Rick when he stayed with Dick on The Exorcist, and that was where they did all that. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's another. It's just a weird little side note to
Maybe one or
Dick's,
two assistants,
right?
maybe Kevin Haney or Craig Rear,
Carl
just
Fullerton.
Rick, Carl Fullerton. That's it. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned him.
Yeah, because he did some great stuff too.
He did. Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned him because that's one I was overlooking. Yeah, Friday the 13th Part 2.
Yep.
I love that Jason makeup.
It's an amazing. It's like better than the movie. It's like that movie's too good almost for that movie.
Yeah,
that makeup's too good for the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I just watched Crimes of Passion. I checked it out. A Ken Russell movie that he did right after Altered States, but I felt Altered States was more satisfying. He was really yeah, I think everyone was really at the highest level there, from the script by Patty Chayefsky and the
That's
acting
right.
and the directing and the makeup. Everyone was at the highest level. And so I think it's one of Ken Russell's best films.
Definitely. The music was really cool too. That weird Moog synthesizer kind of music.
Yeah,
too.
kind of abstract, kind of percussive moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
opening is creepy. The set is creepy. The whole thing about like that flotation tank, it's very cool. Like the whole thing is really, I got to watch that again. But that's
great.
That caveman makeup is another great Dick Smith kind of underrated.
Yeah, Rick sculpted that appliance.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Yeah,
it's awesome. And the hair, again, we're coming back to the hair. Well done. Like hair, I don't know if they laid the hair or if it was
what happened is he laid it on the actor initially, and then he sprayed it with almost like a hairspray or fixative that locked it into place, and he was able to reuse those appliances on it like that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that it wasn't ventilated or hand laid or anything. It was laid, but it was in sections that he put on.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's super smart.
Cool. Really cool.
And no prosthetics on the body, so it's like this lithe dancer, some dancer guy they got who does these, kind of cool. That was a situation where the cool movement really worked, I think.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, there was some cool stuff. The cracked lava suit.
That's right. That wasn't really visible in the movie very well, but the stills of it are really cool.
Yeah.
Craig Reard might know helped with some of that, but beautiful sculpting, great stuff. Yeah, Blair Brown.
Yeah,
I have a crush on her.
Yeah,
yeah, she was. Yeah, great movie.
Yeah, she was great. That was a great movie. Overall, everything about it was great. And it wasn't as weird. It was weird, it was weird in the Ken Russell way, but not as weird as he had gotten before. You know what I mean? I like how the psychedelic sequences are super cool, but he's done a lot of weird movies before that. Like Tommy was insane in this movie, Listomania. He did.
I haven't seen those, but you're right though, because
you haven't seen Tommy.
Well, I've seen excerpts from.
You have to see. You have to see Tommy.
It.
You have to see it. It's insane. It's such a crazy movie.
Did he do Quadrophenia?
No, he didn't do Quadrophenia. That was Alan.
Yeah.
Some other English.
Yeah, I know who you're talking
about.
Yeah.
Alan Parker, maybe.
Alan Parker. Yeah, great director. Yeah, Midnight Express.
That's a great movie. Yeah. I didn't love Quadrophenia, but Tommy, I love Tommy. The music it's great. The music's great. But the movie is you have to see it. It's so good.
Okay, I will.
It's like totally Ken Russell.
Yeah, the one scene I did see, I was like, I got to see the rest of this movie. It was Anne Margaret or something, and what's his name? Yeah.
Oh, Oliver Reed.
Oliver Reed. And it was just bizarre, but I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so I'll check it out.
Oh my God, I'm excited for you to see it now. We're gonna have to talk after that. Okay. Anyway, back to makeup effects. Okay, what are we going into now? Altered
Well,
states?
Chet, as kind of, we're just coming out of Altered States, and I'm almost wondering, American Werewolf in London is almost like
Yeah,
a whole episode podcast in of itself.
I know.
Um, because that's a groundbreaker. The Howling's a groundbreaker, but we kind of talked about the
The
Howling.
Thing.
The
I mean,
Thing,
yeah.
we talked about that, and yeah. Do you have any other stuff about the Thing that you?
We didn't talk about The Thing. We didn't talk about it much. We talked about it. Oh, we talked about it for that whole episode. We did a whole episode on The Thing. I totally
Mhm.
forgot about that. I was thinking that was an interview with you. But that was our Thing episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we don't need to talk about that. If you want to hear about The Thing, go back to we did a whole episode on The Thing.
It's so groundbreaking. It's like American Werewolf in London and The Howling. I mean, these movies, you can't overestimate how influential they were. And
Yeah. Well, uh, there was also Thriller was kind of, I forgot about that too. I was never a huge fan of Thriller because I wasn't really a Michael Jackson fan, but I thought the zombies were awesome. I just didn't really care to see them dancing around. It just was not doing it for me really. But the zombie scene was great.
The transformation was cool.
Transformation was cool.
Cat
Yeah,
design was really cool.
yeah. It's like all that stuff was getting refined in the 80s. All these all the techniques that Dick kind of figured out, like bladders and good prosthetic molds that gave good edges and things like Dick kind of innovated, I think, in the 60s and 70s, were getting refined by people like Rick and Rob and the artists that were starting to establish themselves in the 80s. So these, like American Werewolf in London and
Do you want to talk about American Werewolf?
Yeah, we should for sure.
We should, because it's okay. So Rob's howling makeup, bladders made themselves very visible. They danced on the face. Rick employed bladders, but he didn't pulse them. They just expanded like muscle, like what they're supposed to do on the backs and on the hand stretching. But American Werewolf in London is magic to me, and to you, I'm sure everyone. It's I still. I'm still amazed. Okay, and change-o heads.
Yeah.
I love change-o heads.
Yeah.
And that change-o head in American Werewolf in London when David Naughton transforms is so unbelievably good to me. I mean, the hair work, it's totally plays to so many of Rick's strengths. And it's not over designed. I still don't know how. I'd really like to ask him some questions about how he decided to determine the look of the change-o head, because there was no like flourishes. It just seemed believable.
I just to interject, I sculpted, that was one of like my breakthrough sculptures when I was, I don't know, 13 or 14. Is like I sculpted my version of a change-o head, and I was going to try and do a change-o head, but I just did the sculpture. It's like half of it was kind of human, but it was totally like, the total ripoff.
I want to do change-o heads now.
Well,
I love them so much.
Yeah. And here's the thing, correct me if I'm wrong, but Rick figured out a way to use a urethane. Stretchy urethane.
Yeah, from Smooth On. He was able to use a stretchy urethane.
So nowadays, something like that would be done in silicone very easily. I think plasticized silicone, you could do it. You could punch the hair easily. You could paint it easily. But I know that you could get translucency. And but the urethane back in the day was very difficult to work with. The Smooth On stuff, it was like parts of it would not set up if you didn't. You had to be really strict about it. I remember when I was working for Beinke on something, on one of the urethane buckets, it said, destroy contaminated shoes. So it was like toxic.
Really toxic, huh? It was like
It's like
yeah, like
nasty.
four different components that you had to mix together, at least for the mold making material.
Really?
But I'm assuming it's the same stuff. And I made one mold from the smooth on stuff, and
Back then?
yeah, no, this was when I was in high school
Okay.
or early college, but it was I just remember there were multiple components, and all of them had the skull and crossbones.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is toxic stuff.
Yeah. So just to
And,
have to work, and I know that the urethanes were really difficult to paint too.
I asked Rick about that, and he said rubber mass grease paints. But
Oh, wow.
I love the way those chango heads are painted.
Yeah, they're great.
They
I,
kind of look like translucent. They just
yeah,
work.
well, I guess the point I was getting to was not that it didn't look great, but that it was difficult. That material was difficult to work with. So it's kind of amazing that everything looked as good as it did. Whereas nowadays it would be so much easier to use silicone to, and not, it's kind of insane to think of using rubber mass, grease paint on a chango head like that, like a prop head.
Yeah,
Because that's
yeah.
not, it doesn't dry, it's like a makeup job on a head. It makes sense.
It does. And I remember Time Magazine came out and they were celebrating this moment of special makeup effects. And on where they had like almost like a full page image of the number one chango head in profile. And it was a really high resolution, so you could see all the hair punched into it.
Mhm.
And I was just like, they again just kind of dumbstruck how uh, uh, believable Rick's stuff is.
Yeah.
And even the howling chango heads are really cool, but they're more like there's a stylized kind of
Yeah.
heightened
Hmm.
element to them, whereas the American Werewolf chango heads were just believable. And
And in a bright setting too. That was the other thing. It was like,
it's amazing they he pulled it off like he did. But I'm glad they were lit bright because it's a
mhm.
good contrast to the howling.
Yeah.
And it really does show off how amazing the work that went into that transformation is. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad they were brightly lit. And because when I think of the Howling American Werewolf, there isn't much cross contamination other than just the
Yeah.
transformation because they're very distinctive.
Yeah.
Each one's distinctive of the other.
Yeah.
So
Which shows like what great artists they both were. That they
mhm.
both had their own a werewolf transformation and they did their own thing with it. Um, they both had their kind of fingerprint on it. Whereas, and it's very Rob and very Rick. Like
Mhm.
Rob's was kind of insane and crazy and kind of had like a surreal edge with the dog smile and the shakiness, and Rick's was more like, just kind of straight realistic werewolf transformation, more of naturalistic, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
and Rob's is a little more kind of crazy and surreal.
Do you know what I like about and Rick kind of he sometimes kind of criticizes what he did on that transformation there's a stage where he says it looks like a goon from Popeye, because it has that mane, that
Oh
big,
yeah,
all that.
yeah.
But I really like that
Yeah,
because it's unusual. It's like
it is kind of weird.
it's like that's weird, and then you realize, well, it's kind of you see the finished werewolf, and it has kind of like a lion's mane, longer
Hmm.
hair right there. So he was just simply incorporating that into a stage, but there is that awkward stage and it's I like it
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's like the teenage years or the early teenage or the tween years of the transformation. That
Awkward
everyone goes
stage.
to that ugly awkward stage.
That's right.
But yeah, it's great. And also the Jack stuff was amazing.
Hmm.
The zombie Jack, that makeup, the slashed face with that
Hmm.
piece of meat hanging there, and the Jack corpse. Isn't it Jack? Isn't that his name?
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
sitting in the theater, and
I
I
think my favorite stage is the middle one where he's
yeah,
starting to kind of turn, The wrinkle patterns, how
Mm-hmm.
Rick sculpted that was so good.
Yeah,
And
it's great.
yeah, and you could see him, and he still has that little tool that he likes to use with the loop tool with the it's you get it in ceramic shops with the wood, end,
Mm-hmm.
and then the loop on the other, and it is kind of like the perfect tool, and you can see how he incorporated all the wrinkles using that loop tool. But
Yeah, right.
I love that Jack makeup. But I also love the Nazi demons.
Oh, the Nazi demons. Yeah, we can't forget about the Nazi demons. Those were
Yeah,
amazing.
and oh, yeah, that I really want to see. I want to. Okay, we've seen sculptures of the rotted one,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never seen a really. I would love to see the sculpture of the other, like Werewolf and the Steve Johnson Nazi
The
demon,
bald one.
and the bald one was one that Tom Hester Rick started and Tom
Oh,
Hester
okay.
finished. But Steve Johnson did one that kind of has a mohawk, and you don't see
Hmm.
many pictures of it, but it's pretty
Hmm.
cool looking. And then there's that kind of werewolfish one that
Right.
I wish I could. I wish there was a photo of that sculpture around. But I
Yeah.
love those Nazi demons.
Yeah. It's great. That was what a fun show to work on that must have been. Seems like it would have been such a fun show to do. But
He where he had a shop. Uh, I don't know where that shop was when he started American Werewolf was located. They moved into a shop in Sherman Way, kind of by Berman Industries. And I know where that was, and that's where he did Thriller. But
hmm,
I wonder if where he did American Werewolf out of
I don't
and
know.
Night Skies.
I could ask Bill. Bill
Yeah,
Sturgeon was one of the crew members
yeah,
on that.
part of the half Baker's half dozen.
Yep.
Yeah, so Sean McEnroe, Steve Johnson, Bill Sturgeon, Tom Hester,
Kevin
and
Brennan.
Kevin Brennan, Doug Beswick, and Elaine Baker.
Hmm.
Yeah, great stuff. Young kids just doing amazing
Yeah.
things. So in the werewolf design, um, what are your thoughts on the werewolf?
Uh, I was just watching a clip of it randomly. It just came up. That's kind of weird. But I think one of the coolest shots is this. He doesn't really feature the werewolf, but in the subway where the guy's
Hmm.
going up the escalator and you just see it
Hmm.
start come into frame.
Hmm.
You know the shot I'm talking about? It's
Oh, totally do.
overhead. I just thought that
Yeah,
was. I remember
it's
seeing that in the theater. Like that is really cool
hmm
and creepy. I thought uh the design is great. I think it's a really great sculpture and design.
hmm
Um, the way the whole kind of how did he? It's like a wheelbarrow type.
hmm
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so if you remember teeter totter, yeah, if you basically just have a plank,
Right.
and so Kevin Brennan laid down on the plank with the plank underneath supporting his torso and his legs straight in the back, and then the suit, pretty much inserts himself into the suit, and his arms are what's motivating or moving
Right.
it, and someone's like supporting all the weight and moving him
And
from
it's only
behind as if it's a wheelbarrow kind of thing.
right, and it's only shootable up to the waist.
Yeah. So in that scene you talked about in the subway, just when you're about to see the person pushing it, it
Yeah.
cuts. So it's
Yeah.
perfect. And yeah, the scenes where he's moving in Piccadilly Square, um, that looks so cool. That was such a great solution. And again, it contrasts and complements The Howling really well
Yeah.
because it's more like a wolf beast and hound from hell, as John Landis
Mhm.
described it, and believable. You can
Yeah.
almost see that as like a wolf
Mhm.
or a stray dog causing all this havoc.
Mhm.
Um, and I, you know, it, his hair works so good,
Yeah, the hair works amazing.
and I like the little details on how Rick. The eyes are dark. The hair around the eyes, the area around the eyes is dark,
Mhm.
and then the cheekbone hair is kind of brighter,
Mhm.
and then the eyebrow, just the way he sculpted it and the eyebrows. Um, it just really really cool. And I guess he used his dog Bosco as reference. So
Oh, really?
I wonder if he had any pictures of Bosco and just to see how close it came to it.
Oh,
But
that's cool.
yeah, he said it was kind of the inspiration for the werewolf's look. But
Yeah,
yeah.
it's funny that the Howling Werewolf versus the American Werewolf. It's like the American Werewolf is like cleaner,
Hmm.
you know, and the Howling Werewolves are more like rattier. They
Hmm.
seem more like nastier and messier, kind of, right? They're more
Yeah.
like you'd see a coyote. You ever seen coyotes? They're all kind of mangy, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Well, the howling werewolves are like these 8 foot tall werewolf perverts.
right?
Eddie Quist was it's basically a rogue, kind of almost like a rapist.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wasn't getting along with the rest of the colony.
Right.
He wanted to go out and just live his life, a little more ferally.
Mm-hmm.
And Rob told me one thing that's really interesting about the howling. He said he said during the transformation scene, there was an insert shot that was cut out of the movie of right before, the he smiles, Eddie Quist smiles, and at
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of the transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there there was an insert that preceded that. It was of him unzipping his pants.
Really?
Yes. So he was, Eddie Quist was exposing himself, in every way in a perverted sense
Uh-huh.
to what's her name in it? The actress I like so much,
D
Dee
D
Wallace.
Wallace.
Yeah. So he's kind of like exposing himself and getting a kind of thrill out of that. And that's
Right.
what stimulated the smile. But of course, they didn't use that. But I wish they had. I wish they had. I think
Yeah,
it was Rob's idea.
that's kind of
Uh,
great.
because
I
that
mean,
kind of that
creepy, but
symbolizes the whole creature. That
yeah,
the werewolf is kind of like is a libido, um, uh, uh,
out of control.
sexuality
Yeah.
and feralness all in one. And he was kind of like, yeah, this rapist werewolf, and that would have been interesting to see.
Yeah, yeah. There's also a great shot where he pulls a bullet out of his head,
Hmm.
where that
Hmm.
like it's a close up of a fake head.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
so cool. That's such a
so cool. And there's a great a picture of Rob working on it, and it looks so neat. And you could really see where Robert Picardo's features were so
yeah,
perfect for it.
yeah.
He had those distinctive lips, that nose, the glabella creases, and perfect face for it.
So it's just like a fake head, and they had someone stick their fingers in the
Yeah,
hole to pull the bullet out. It just works so
yeah,
well.
so
Again, so
cool.
Rob too. Such a Rob idea, a way of doing something.
So he had a little more leeway in some of that stuff because just the character of it. Whereas Rick's American Werewolf, it was excuse me, the protagonist, and so yeah, it wouldn't have worked. It had to be somewhat. It couldn't be
Yeah, right,
disgusting.
right.
It could be scary, but it wouldn't have been appropriate for
Yeah,
it to be
yeah,
disgusting
true.
or yeah,
Now,
ratty or whatever.
so okay, Rick was going to do the Howling. My
Yeah.
understanding is Rick was going to do the Howling, and then there was some other movie that was going to go. So he recommended Rob, and then they had been trying to get. I just heard John Landis talking about this. They had been trying to get American Werewolf going since the 70s.
Yeah. Since Schlock, because Landis wrote it around the time of Schlock, so he and Rick would kind of brainstorm ways
Mm.
of doing the transformation.
And so Rick couldn't do the Howling, so he recommended Rob. And then I guess American Werewolf got greenlit suddenly.
Well, Rick was hired to do the Howling, so
Oh, right. Okay, you're
he was
right.
hired to
Yeah.
do it, and then all of a sudden, like literally, he gets a call from John Landis
Oh, he had to.
that he got the money.
He couldn't work on the Howling because of American Werewolf.
Yes, but he
Okay.
had started the Howling, but obviously throughout the Hollywood grapevine, someone had called up some executives or producers and said, Joe Dante's doing a werewolf movie and Rick Baker's doing the makeup effects. And that probably lit the fire underneath some, if George Falsey Jr. or whatever the producer and stuff to get the money.
Mm-hmm.
So Rick didn't. Yeah, it wasn't just, I think, happenstance. I think
Right.
as
Okay.
Hollywood works, word got around that this werewolf was being made, and that was the catalyst for American Werewolf getting its funding. So they were in direct competition then. And so Rick gets a call from John Landis saying, "We've got the money." And then what a horrible position Rick was in,
Right.
because he had started it. And so he did the honorable thing, and he said, I'll do your movie. And then he deferred to Rob to do
So
it.
was Rob assisting him on The Howling?
Yes.
Okay.
And then so he got Rob to do it, and Greg Canham, and then the Steve Johnson, Sean McEnroe, they were all on that. So a lot of the Baker's half dozen were on The Howling.
That's right.
And of course, Greg Canham, we shout out to him, because those Eddie Quist bladders and stuff and that makeup was Greg.
Oh, that's right.
Rob had design input, of course, because he wanted Eddie Quist to kind of resemble him, according to Robert Picardo. But it's obvious, the long hair and everything.
Really?
And the first time I saw a picture of Rob, I thought, what's one of the werewolves doing applying one of the werewolf makeup? Because he looked like it. And it's like, oh. Yeah, so what a dilemma.
Yeah.
And so Rick had to relinquish The Howling to Rob, but Rick, I think, still, supervised. But again, back to Greg Canham. That was the first time you see kind of the famous Canham brow on Christopher Stone. And so, Greg Canham, he really can pack a makeup with a lot of power. His use of just like that brow and the teeth. I love that werewolf design on Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh yeah, that's great.
So he's just really good at that. Lost Boys. Greg's kind of an interesting guy. I've worked with him on a couple projects.
Yeah, he did a lot of great stuff.
He's deceptively talented, because he's so understated. He's just such a low key, understated guy. But yeah, he really is one of the great talents of the industry.
Yeah, he's worked on a ton of stuff.
Yeah. So The Howling really is a good collaboration.
He worked on the Incredible Melting Man.
He did?
That's what it says on his
because I know Rob did. So okay, so there you go.
And the Fury.
Interesting.
Wow.
He worked on Greystoke too.
Wow.
But
Cocoon. Thriller.
Yep.
Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Great artist. I hope he's doing okay, because he had an illness, and I'm not sure if he found out he had diabetes or what, but I think his feet were amputated.
No, really?
Yeah, and I haven't heard how he's doing. He's I hope he's doing well.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I do.
What a bummer. Well, yeah, he's done a ton of The Exorcist 3.
Oh, those are great. Those are great stuff.
Yeah.
Mitch worked on that.
Yeah. Mitch did a bunch of stuff for Greg. I know that Mitch had a lot of respect for Greg as an artist.
Well, and on my list is Dracula.
Yeah,
which I think is one of it's one of those groundbreaking movies. I think everything Greg did on that, and with the talented crew he had, Mitch and Glenn Hans and everyone, he just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah,
because I think those are I still think almost unsurpassed. That old age makeup on Gary Oldman is so beautifully simple and perfect.
Yeah.
And then the werewolf designs and the hair work, everything was just really well done. Plus the lighting and Coppola's direction. It's like, it's just stellar work. Absolutely.
Yeah. I haven't seen that one also in a long time, but
it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. The I know the effects are amazing. Do you remember The Sword and the Sorcerer?
I do.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that Greg Canham.
Yeah, I remember I thought those makeups were really good. I remember seeing him in magazines. It's kind of an obscure one to bring up, but he did like leprosy makeups, I think. Or
Yeah, I need to see that again. And there was a transformation, so he got to kind of do a transformation and using bladders and things. And it was lit in red though. I remember that it was not as easy to discern what was going on.
Yeah, it's funny. We would read Fangoria, or I guess it's Fangoria. I always called it Fangoria, like Fang, but I guess it's supposed to be Fangoria.
I always thought it was like Fang, as in monster fangs.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Fangoria.
But I guess, but it's like Fangore, maybe. I think.
Where did you hear this?
I heard someone like that was worked at Fangoria say it on some video, like wasn't explaining that, but the way they were pronouncing it was Fangoria. And I was like, that kind of makes sense, because it's like a fan magazine, and it's kind of a gore magazine. Not that it matters. But anyway, what I was going to say is that, we would get these magazines and you'd see pictures that weren't necessarily in the movie. Like, I remember these makeups that he did for Sword and the Sorcerer. I don't know that you even saw them in the movie, but it's like a leper. I think it's a leper makeup, or it might have been a demon makeup. I don't know. But, in Fangoria, you'd see a lot of the behind the scenes pictures of makeups that, you couldn't really see that well in the movie, and you could see how well they were sculpted and applied. You get a lot of that. Okay, let's get
real quick. Speaking of Fangoria, one of my favorite issues is the one with the Funhouse. Creature, and that was a Rick Baker, Craig Reardon, and I want to bring that up because Craig Reardon was really influential too.
Yeah,
and that's a great design. I remember seeing a latex pull of it at Rick's shop.
How was it?
And it was cool. It was a little bit distorted though. I think the latex had kind of stretched out or something, and it seems really small. I think that shrunk something.
Oh, weird.
But it's an effective design and a scary movie, really.
Really? I don't think I ever saw that movie.
It's disturbing.
Really?
It's really disturbing. It's a very darkly lit, disturbing movie. It scared me. It kind of scared me.
Okay.
These teenagers decide to stay overnight in a fun house, and they spy on this monster, but he's wearing a Frankenstein mask, so they don't know it's a monster. And then they're just kind of watching it as he's dealing with the proprietor and his wife, or a prostitute that comes in, and the monster wants to have sex, and he has sex with the woman, and then he ends up freaking out somehow because she laughs. I don't know. I can't remember. But he ends up freaking out. And above him, these young kids, teenagers, are watching through a little crack in the hardwood floor or whatever. And so they're sitting there watching this. The monster's freaking out. He still has the Frankenstein mask on. He just had like some kind of embarrassing sexual interlude with this woman that was in there. He rips off the mask. And he screams, and that's the reveal of the creature looking upwards. And then the kids see this, and it was a really frightening moment. And then they realize they're stuck in this funhouse with this thing. Oh, he just killed the prostitute or whatever, the lady, and because she was laughing or made fun of him or whatever, and he killed her. And then he screams, and they see it. So it's kind of like Blue Velvet, where they're watching something. Just kind of go into a really dark territory, and it was effective. And the makeup looked great.
Was that just a mask?
Just a pullover mask,
right?
Yeah, and so Rick sculpted it and designed, and Craig Reardon cast it up, painted everything, and I think he did the hands and stuff. So
Craig also painted E.T., didn't he?
Yep. Yeah, he did.
And apparently the paint job wasn't good, and he had to kind of I always heard that the paint job looked like flat
flesh color.
Yeah.
And he came in and
modeled it up with some
blue, some blues and purples and reds, and kind of just he did a great job. I watched ET just recently,
Yeah.
and the paint job does really kind of save it.
I'll tell you, it was so cool. I got to work with Craig Reardon a couple times, and I was able to tell him that one of my favorite effects in any movie or one of the big effects images from my childhood that affected me was the head he sculpted for that door that wasn't used. That creepy head, the like laughing head.
It's that blue laughing head, and
I
the
thought
wrinkles
that
he sculpted and stuff on that were so
I thought
good.
it was so cool, and that was like I just love that sculpture for some
agree.
reason, and I couldn't believe they didn't use it, even though what they used it was that the thing at the door on Poltergeist, that thing guarding the door that was kind of like a weird spider legs, like a skull kind of head.
Yeah, there's that spider legs things that what's it, Joe Beth Williams sees.
Oh no, I'm getting it confused.
And then there's this skull like thing.
It's a giant skull head.
Yeah.
And I thought that the head that Craig made was way cooler. That blue head. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't have worked, but.
Well, he used that design for the Twilight Zone movie.
Right. Yeah.
That was scary.
Yeah, that was cool, but that wasn't as cool as that. That head was, because it was like it wasn't a makeup. It was a head sculpture, so he could get all that depth and the huge grin, and
it was so well done.
So I was able to tell him that, and he was so cool about it. He was so like, I don't know. You know how Craig is. He's such a nice guy. Mm-hmm. And I think he brought a cast in for me to look at.
Oh, yeah, and it was really, to have seen it.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Oh man, I worked with him briefly on Alien Nation, the TV series with Rick Stratton and Brent Armstrong, and Brent just passed away, but it's sad.
Yeah, really sad.
But Rick Stratton and I worked with Craig, and it was an honor. I was thrilled every day to be able to work with him because he's of that period. He's like legend.
Yeah,
very very nice guy, very humble,
super nice guy.
Yeah,
I can't remember what I worked with him on, but I worked with him a couple times. Something at Alterian and then something at Rick's. But
something at Rick's? Craig Reardon at Rick's?
I think so. I think he came in for a short time to do something.
Oh wow, that's neat.
I'm totally getting I can't remember what it was.
Oh. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, he inspired a lot of people.
I admire him. Mm-hmm.
And he did that Twilight Zone movie
at the end.
Gremlin.
Yeah.
He did the Gremlin.
Yeah, the Gremlin. That was
great.
Yeah,
super cool.
And Rob's Rob's great. Big Daddy Roth cartoony characters.
Oh yeah.
Fun. That was yes.
I just painted that.
Nice painting. Yep. So cool.
Yeah, that thing was all that stuff was so cool. Again, it was like Rob's fingerprints all over. Yeah.
There's a big resin. There's a big fiberglass casting of it at Rob's shop, up in the corner of the shop, and I would just sit and get distracted by it, and just stare at it because it was so cool.
Yeah.
And, yeah. But
Okay. What else do we have in the 80s?
VideoDrome.
Oh, VideoDrome, another amazing effects.
And also, before we forget, I'd like to just a shout out to Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, Chris Wallace.
I love that Chris Wallace. That ending of Raiders really left an impact on me, and it was just so amazing.
Yeah, totally.
And so, great. Yeah, he really contributed something there. Because that was exhilarating. I just love that ending.
Yeah, it's totally great, and again, it also holds up. I think I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember it being really good.
Mm-hmm.
But Chris Wallace did all kinds of cool stuff. He did Gremlins.
Yeah. What else he did?
The Fly. He did The Fly.
The Fly.
That was some amazing work.
I think that was Chris just in top form.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie is so good. Yeah, I have that here in my notes, and he's just amazing. And so, yeah, his crew, Stefan Dupuis and Margaret Becerra, who applied it, and that's one of those movies where the makeup and the actor, it was a perfect
Mm-hmm.
joining
Yeah.
because Jeff Goldblum really came alive, sold that makeup so
Yeah.
well.
That's one I got
And
to see that I haven't seen in a
he should have got
long
he should
time.
have got an Oscar for it because few people have been able to perform like he did
Mm-hmm.
um, outside of the makeup.
Yeah.
It was just amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, Chris Walas's work on that was fantastic. Um,
And he was like he was a Northern California guy. He was not a Hollywood guy. He did stuff out of like
yeah, the Bay
Northern
Area.
Yeah, the Bay Area,
Yeah, yeah,
which I thought was interesting. Um, Enemy Mine.
yep, yep,
Um,
fantastic.
shit.
And then he did like Arachnophobia and Naked Lunch,
Oh
and
yeah, Naked Lunch, a
yeah.
great effects film.
So
Uh,
speaking of yeah, like Cronenberg. So do you want to talk Videodrome?
yeah, yeah. Sorry. Oh,
Oh, no.
you know what we forgot from the
What?
'70s? Humanoids from the Deep,
Oh yeah,
which is Rob, but you know it's just kind of like
yeah,
a Ant Piranha.
yeah. Pre-Howling
Yep.
stuff. Yeah,
Rob Bottin at 18 or something.
goodness
It's
sakes.
crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, we have to move on.
Well, I think
Videodrome.
Videodrome was interesting because it was. I think that was what he did right after American Werewolf in London. I don't, and I think then he moved on to Greystoke after that. So Videodrome was yeah this what an interesting collaboration
Yeah.
of David Cronenberg and Rick Baker. So I I yeah I still am quite enamored with that. Uh, the I was really kind of obsessed with that TV that came alive,
Yeah.
and I think I even sculpted my version of it when I was young,
Oh yeah.
and blew straws and made it pulsate and stuff. And then the video cassette that came alive, and then there was uh yeah he had
There was the gun and the hand
yep
and
yep
the weird sticking the gun in his body,
uh-huh
which was freaky. That fake arm, the fake arm rig.
yeah
That was, that was like you would expect that to be a Rob show, and that kind of showed Rick going more in that surreal area.
especially when the guy comes apart at the end
Yeah,
and when he's shot with the tumors burst out of his body,
that's
head splits.
that's my
great.
That's my favorite effect in the movie.
Same
It's
here.
so disturbing and disgusting. It's so well
cool.
done.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah, so what else was I think that was yeah. So that was a very Rob Bottin effect, the splitting and tumors coming out.
Well,
So
a lot of that stuff I think was like the hand, the gun turning into his hand, and spikes going into his hand.
yeah, so that was a Tom Hester effect. So Rick let Tom Hester kind of
Cool.
supervise that effect. And yeah, and I loved. There's one moment that was really kind of strange in that movie when the TV's pulsating and then the screen of the TV pushes out, and what's his name? I forgot the actor's name, but he shoves his face into that screen, and it's all squishy
I know,
and fleshy
it's so
and
crazy.
kind of weirdly erotic.
Yeah.
Well, it was meant to be erotic and kind of suggestive, but yeah, that was that movie. I just watched it recently, and I love the music and yeah, we referenced it briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Before in a podcast, but
do you know how they did the static on the screen?
I think it was just projected
from the front. Because I can't figure that.
Good question.
How I couldn't figure out how he was. Yeah, how was he not casting a shadow on it? Maybe it was projected from behind. How is it not the projection not getting on his head?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to rewatch it, or maybe go through. There's some good behind the scenes and see how they did that.
Ask Bill,
or ask Bill. Yeah,
Bill worked on it.
Yeah.
That's the good thing about being in the industries. You get to ask all your friends how these
I
effects are done.
know.
Yeah, that was a great one. Okay, so what else is on your list of?
Well, let's talk about Tom Berman real quick,
Okay.
because he did Cat People.
Oh yeah.
He did The Beast Within.
Oh
So
yeah.
he was definitely part of that transformation
Yep.
period. And and they have their own unique feel to them and flavor. And and there's some stills
Invasion
of
of the
the
Body Snatchers.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers
With
that
the
in the 70s, but
oh, that was in the 70s. That's right. You know what we didn't
yeah.
mention quickly is the old man's face on the dog and the dog licks.
Oh, that was cool.
That was so
Yeah,
cool.
that worked really well.
Anyway,
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, yeah,
Beast Within. They overdo it with the bladders, but there's one shot of where it's like balloon.
yeah, it's
I
crazy.
love it because you just like what am I looking at there? And it I love that.
What I heard is that they shot the scene, and at the end, the just for fun, they were over cranking the bladders just for the
Yeah.
hell of it, and
So that's what that ballooning head was? Was that
yeah,
in the movie or that was
that was like them
Oh.
goofing around after they had shot like the way that it was supposed to be, where it was like not totally ridiculously. This is I don't know if it's true. This is I think Beinke told me this or somebody told me this, and the director liked it and put it in the movie.
Hmm.
So it's because it's crazy.
That's what was supposed to happen at the end of Lost Highway when Bill Pullman's character starts physically fuging out of control,
Mm-hmm.
and his head uh, was like ballooning,
Mm-hmm.
and Michael Burnett did the effects, but it's like that head that Tom Berman made of that extreme state is what needed to be in Lost Highway.
Mm.
Because can you imagine seeing that head driving a car,
Yeah,
freaking out?
that would
How
be
cool
super
that would have
Lynch,
been.
very Lynchian.
And but yeah, Tom Berman had a certain style about his stuff. And real quick, I want to just say what my favorite Tom Berman makeup is or effect, and it's in the movie Scrooged. He played. Let me see what that character. It was almost like a dead zombie makeup, but it was of what's that? His Let me see.
Is that old guy? The old
Yeah, Bill Murray's in it, and I
a
forget that
mouse? Is
character.
it the one where the mouse crawls through?
Yes,
Yeah, that
I
is a cool
love
makeup.
that. I love that makeup, and boy, I can't see it on here. Let me see.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And then Scanners,
Oh,
the
Scanners.
exploding head.
Yeah, Scanners
And
was another. David Cronenberg did a lot of great effects films.
yeah, Jacob Marley, that's the character's name for
Okay.
Scrooge. Yeah, so but Scanners was that came out around the same time as Altered States. And I remember Siskel and Ebert gave Scanners a thumbs up, and they liked Scanners more than Altered States, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah,
But they're both good, but
I saw Scanners recently, and I thought it was great. Like I liked it better than I even liked it when I was a kid because I kind of understood the story more.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff, the effects really hold up.
Mm-hmm.
Those the veins, there, of course, is the one of the best exploding heads in the history of exploding heads.
Yeah.
There was
the definitive exploding head.
It is the definitive,
iconic.
Incredible. It's so amazing. It just
have you ever freeze framed it?
Oh yeah, of course.
Right.
What kind of nerd do you think I am?
Yeah, of course. I shouldn't have asked. Right before it totally obliterates, it's like expands.
Yeah.
It looks like the Beast Within.
Totally.
Head. So.
Yeah, and so that was Dick Smith shooting it from behind with a shotgun at an angle.
Yeah,
which is kind of amazing.
It worked.
Yeah, it was so good, so good. The hands clenched on the desk, and I remember because I saw that in the theater too when it came out, and I was like, "What year did that come out?"
I think what was that? 1980 perhaps?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But that was shocking. It was shocking. In the same way, seeing that exploding head in Dawn of the Dead was shocking, but it was even like in brighter light, and it was slow motion. The Dawn of the Dead head explosion in the beginning was just like, boom, it came out of nowhere and it shocked you. But this was like kind of a slow motion explosion in a brightly lit room.
Yeah, the frame rate was slowed down a little bit. Yeah, you're right. And that was a good call.
1981.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, great year.
And so then there was also that really cool scene. It's not a makeup effect, but that melting phone. Do you remember when he's on the payphone and the phone melts in his hand?
Yeah.
It was really weird and cool.
Yeah.
But the finale where the two scanners are fighting each other was really great. It was Dick Smith using the Elvisite appliances, which was like a plastic that he made channels in them so you could pump blood in them, and you could see the blood underneath the skin. It wasn't typical bladders. It was that translucent.
Yeah, it was like what they did for the Fury, but rather than just air, he pumped actual blood in it.
Right.
But cool.
But the Fury was like foam, like more of a foam latex air thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Whereas I think these were Elvisite, where you blended it. It was like a vinyl or something, some kind of weird vinyl, and they blended the edges with acetone. It wasn't like a regular foam latex, as far as I can remember.
That makes sense because he used, I think it was Elvisite for a fake head in Ghost Story. I think of Douglas Fairbanks Jr. perhaps was the character, but he had a great fake head of that character who jumps off a bridge, and you could tell it wasn't foam latex. There was a translucent quality, so I think it was Elvisite. And so either that kind of encouraged him to use it in scanners or vice versa. But that makes sense that it was probably that.
Yeah, because when you pump the blood in there, you could see it. I thought was so cool about those effects. You could see it under the skin, the blood coming through, and then there was like little pinholes in it, so it would bulge out in these weird patterns, and little teeny streams of blood would be kind of squirting out, which is really freaky. And then he did the veins on the arms in the same way, smartly wearing a watch to cover the seam. There's like him wearing a wristwatch that covered the seam, I think, if I can remember correctly. And then him like getting those big blood blisters in his face and then like ripping the skin off. I remember that just seeming so horrible and painful looking.
Yeah, and then his eyes explode.
That's kind of nasty.
And then there's that great Michael Ironside, with the whited out eyes,
right?
Just enraged. That's a really cool image.
Yeah.
And that's a great finale, that show. And so it was Dick Smith, Chris Walas, and is that it? Yeah, Chris Walas was. So those two worked together on that. Chris Walas
there was like another French.
Did he do the fake head?
I don't know. There was another French guy, I think, who worked on it with him, didn't he?
Stéphane Dupuis?
I think so, maybe.
Huh.
I could be wrong.
Maybe I'm wrong about Chris Walas. I thought maybe he did work on that.
I don't know. Let me see. Yeah, Chris Walas. Yeah. Chris Walas worked on the exploding head effect with Dick Smith. Gary Zeller. He was he worked on the Blob. He was like a practical effects guy.
Oh. Well, the Blob, Chet. You worked on that.
Oh yeah, that was in the 80s.
That was a good movie, and that was 80s. And I thought what you guys did was great. I thought Tony Gardner.
It was
really cool, ambitious. You guys did a lot of work on that.
Yeah, it was crazy.
How long were you on that?
I can't even remember. I want to say like 8 months or 9 months, but I can't remember. I could find out, but
Now, did you say you guys worked in the same warehouse as Lyle Conway's crew? Is that true?
Yeah, it was split in half. It was a big warehouse, and one half was the Blob crew, and then the other half was the Blob victims crew. And we were on the Blob. We did the Blob victims, and then Lyle did the Blob. And there was some
And
crossover sometimes.
yeah, and Bill Corso was like supervising or something on that. And yeah,
Yeah.
he was on the Lyle crew.
Mm-hmm. And
And
Mark Satrakian was on that was where I met like all these.
was he was on the Lyle crew? Mark
Yeah.
Satrakian?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow. So a
Yeah.
lot of talent was on that. And it shows. That
Yeah.
talent shows on screen because it's almost as ambitious as like The Thing.
Yeah.
There was a
Yeah.
lot of cool effects in that.
Yeah. It was so much fun. It was one of the, I think maybe the most fun I ever had on a movie, but I don't, it
Was
really,
Mike Smithson part of their crew?
Smithson was part of our crew. On our crew, it was, Bill Sturgeon, Mike Smithson, Brian Wade, Sean McEnroe at
Wow.
first in the beginning. He didn't go the whole time. Lauren Githens.
Wow. Yeah.
Can't remember, but it was like I met all of kind of like yeah, and then the other side it was Bill Corso, Mark Satrakian, not was it John Criswell or some what's that other
D-
mechanic guy? Not
Dave Kinlan?
Dave Kinlan, I think worked on it. I
Okay.
think um
Oh,
Mitch worked on it.
that's
Mitch
right. He
did,
did those miniature. He did some small miniature.
yeah, I got
I
the
think I think Mike Elzaldi did too.
did he?
Was was Mike Elzaldi on that crew? Was he on your side?
No,
Oh my goodness, you have
yeah, he
that.
gave it to me. His hand sculpture is so good.
Oh my goodness, how cool.
That's so
It's
it's
interesting to see the scale they chose. So what is that? Half scale?
yeah, I guess so.
Look at that.
It's incredible. I remember him coming when that was the first time I met him, him coming to the shop because he did stuff at home. He was
Mm.
freelancing. He didn't work in the shop, and him bringing these little teeth for the puppet heads, and they were just I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. They were a perfect reproduction of someone's teeth, but that
Oh
they're like
man.
small. It was so crazy. I'd never seen
Ah,
a sculpture that good before.
yeah.
You know,
Boy, they sure got the right man for the job.
I know.
Oh,
Yeah, that was back before the scanning. You could scan things, and yeah, it was amazing. It was so much fun and a lot of work. It was huge,
that
huge
I
year for
enjoyed the
me.
movie. I really
Yeah,
did.
I think
I enjoyed the movie.
I watched it recently, and it's really good. It still holds up as a fun movie.
Chuck Russell, the director, kind of an I have really mixed feelings about him because I worked on what was it? This Present Darkness. So at Greg Canham's and at the time it was captive audience. So Keith Vanderlyn was kind of
Oh my
supervising.
god, I forgot about that. All that.
Yeah, I've worked on a couple projects, but we had a hell of a crew on that. My goodness, a who's who: Steve Wang, Moto, Brian Wade,
Wow.
Miles Tevis. We had a hell of a crew, and Jose Fernandez did some stuff, and we were all working on it. It was up in oh, I forget the valley just north, but or Seven Flags is that I think it is. But Chuck Russell came in one day and he just, we all had a group meeting and he came in and he said, "You guys are doing great. I just want to thank all of you. I'm just so happy with everything and just keep it up." And then he left and they were all feeling good. And then Keith Vanderlyn um, came in and says, "Well, the show's been canceled. We're letting y'all go."
Whoa.
Literally.
What the hell?
And we were all just like, "What?" We were stunned because we were all just feeling great because we just got all this praise from the director, and he fled town. He just left quickly, and left it all to Keith Vanderlyn. And I must say, I've had I haven't had the best experiences with Keith Vanderlyn in the past, but that was one moment where I thought he handled it really well
Hmm.
because he had to break the news that we're canceled, everyone has to go, and it was one of those abrupt
Wow.
shocks. And so it's like, wow, what the hell was Chuck Russell thinking? Why couldn't he just be honest with us?
Yeah, that's so
Instead, he
weird.
just kind of cowardly fled and left it to Keith to kind of tell us the bad news. So
Yeah, that's
weird,
really, really
real
weird.
weird. But having said that, I thought the Blob was really quite good.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of interaction with him. I think just in the way that you normally do when a director comes by and approves things. And
Yeah,
um, I remember seeing what's the Frank Darabont, because he wrote that.
that's
I think,
right.
yeah, and it was like one of his first movies, I think.
Oh, that's right.
And he was really cool. I remember him being really like
Yeah,
a nice guy.
I met him at Rick's. So they were doing a test makeup on the Green Mile. So
Mm.
Kazu was doing a test on Tom Hanks to see if they wanted to go that route
Mm-hmm.
for an old age makeup, and K&B was doing one simultaneously, which is kind of odd. So each shop was kind of was vying for this moment,
The
and then
Bake
have
Off.
this yeah, and he came by the shop and he was just really friendly. Came over and shook mine and Bruce Spalding Fuller's hands. We were working on something in the main area, and yeah, I was impressed with him. He didn't
Yeah.
have to do that. He came over and made a point to shake our hands, and Tom Hanks did too.
Mm.
So it was really cool. But yeah, they never. I actually think that's one of the moments where it was best not to go with the makeup in the Green Mile
Hmm.
because that actor who they had play an older version of Tom Hanks was believable.
Mm-hmm.
His features were just enough that it was believable,
Uh,
and so yeah, it worked. It worked.
yeah, I think Frank Darabont is like he's kind of like a Guillermo in Del Toro in the sense that he's like one of us
Hmm.
that made it, because
Yeah,
he's like a total he's into the horror movies and sci-fi and effects and stuff like that. He's like into
yeah,
it, or like a Quentin Tarantino type, like they're really into the stuff that we're into, like the
yeah.
the practical effects and stuff.
And that's so cool. That's so
Yeah.
appreciated.
Yep. Because yeah, people don't realize that a lot of directors are not into that stuff. They're
No.
more into, which is fine. They're more into like regular, kind of more normal movies, and so they don't really think much about practical effects and stuff. But there's a handful of these directors that are like, you have the same interests, like they know all the same movies as you. They have the
Hmm.
same points of reference of like weird, obscure horror movies that are like cult classics and stuff. You know,
Yeah, yeah. It would have
so
been fun to work with like a John Landis or Joe Dante too, because they were kind of like that, real
yeah,
cinephiles.
yeah,
They knew all the stuff that goes into it, and then there are guys like James Cameron
yeah.
who does as well and knows everything, So yeah, that's cool when that happens.
The thing about John Landis is he totally insulted me on a film set, as I was so bummed about that
What happened?
because he he just like tried intentionally embarrassed me on a set when I was dropping something off.
What was it
And I
for?
was such a big fan of his too. That was the bummer. It's like I was
Oh
like a fan
no.
of American Werewolf. I was a huge fan of the Blues Brothers. Like I
Yeah.
was like a big fan of his.
So you're dropping something off, coming on set.
Yeah, it was
Were they
for
shooting? What the hell happened?
it was a prop that Alterian did for.
Innocent Blood?
No, it was some HBO. It's on the tip of my tongue. It was like an
Dream On?
Dream On. I don't
Okay.
remember what it was, but
Yeah.
but I came to drop it off, and I was going through my punk rock phase, and I suppose I had some culpability a little bit. I had
You
half my
exuded
head
something.
shaved. Well, it was my shirt was like it said slaughter slaughter of the innocent, and it had one of those vivisection, like a grainy photograph of a cat with like implants in its brain, like those horrible vivisection
Uh-huh.
and I had it on my shirt. It was probably inappropriate to go on set like that. But he's like, he saw me and he's like, and he was like, said it really loud in front of the crew. And he was being an asshole. He really was. Cause he goes, "Oh, I don't suppose you eat meat either, huh?" Like he saw my shirt and I was like, "Yeah, I don't." And he's like, "Yeah, well, I bet you wear leather shoes." And I was like, "No, actually I don't." Like I was hardcore back then. And I had like canvas shoes. I didn't even buy leather. And he's like, "Well, you don't exist in this world." Like it was really a weird thing to say. Like
he targeted you.
Yeah. But he said it loud so everyone on set could hear. And all the people on set were looking at me like embarrassed for me. Like they all knew that he was being a dick. Like no one was like, like into that. It was like they all kind of like,
it's inappropriate.
They all were looking at me like they felt bad. Like, oh, he's being an asshole right now. So that was like such a disappointment because I was such a fan of his.
That would be. Well, John Landis is kind of this larger than life character. He's really smart, very funny, but at the same time loud and just kind of, I don't know.
But he was also,
it doesn't surprise me necessarily that you would say that.
Yeah.
I could see it happening, you know?
And he was also he's also one of those guys, like one of those type of directors that is kind of like one of us that made it. Like he's into effects and stuff too, like as a nerd, you know, like he was talking about how on some interview I saw where he, I think, met John Chambers when Planet of the Apes was happening, and he had some job on a Universal lot or something, and he would
he was the mail. He started at the bottom as a mail person, and he'd deliver mail, and so he'd go around all to the departments, and
he would hang out in the makeup place because he was into that sort of thing.
He was into it, you know. What was I going to say about John?
But he's on my shit list now.
Yeah, I would be too. But I was going to say something. Yeah, it kind of seems to character. I know. Steve Johnson said working with him on Innocent Blood, he was extremely blunt.
Mm.
You know, and so he could be rude or just like, let's just say he wasn't concerned about your feelings.
Right.
And maybe that's a mode that one goes into if the pressure of production and getting your shots done for the day or whatever. There's no excuse.
Yeah.
But Steve Johnson commented that he was taken aback at first or something like that, but eventually he started to like the bluntness because it was honest. You know, so he didn't have to second guess anything. If John Landis didn't like it, he would tell you.
Right.
And so I don't know. There's no excuse for him to pick on you like that. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, and it was like I was such a company man at the time too. I was very like I was thinking of the business, so I didn't say anything back to him or anything.
Well, you were alone too, right?
Yeah,
so you're just alone and kind of vulnerable.
Yeah, I could. You know, I'm weird like this. Like I'm really mild mannered and non-confrontational, but when there's like I have this weird thing where there's like a point, if you cross pass, I would have told him off. Like I would have said like, fuck you or something. I would have said something if I wasn't thinking about Tony in the shop, Alterian, that I was working for. There's like it's for the most part, I am kind of like, you know, chicken to do that, but there's this weird point and their switch goes off and I'm not afraid to confront somebody. It's really a weird thing, but I have to be really angry. It's like, I can't do it unless I get pissed off. It's really weird, but it takes a lot to piss me off though.
Yeah.
But so anyway, that's just a total side note.
But you know what? It's interesting though, Chet.
Yeah, it's
interesting.
It is an interesting story
because you know, you hear horror stories about James Cameron on set. And that he could be a real brutal tyrant. But I met James Cameron at the Sundance Film Festival once. A friend of mine and I went to a screening of Blue Steel. It was Catherine Bigelow's premiere of her movie Blue Steel, and she was dating James Cameron at the time. And so after the movie, my friend, who's much more brave than I, went down to shake James Cameron's hand, and I just I followed him, and he was so nice. He
Yeah.
was just. And we asked him, "What are you working on now?" And he says, "Well, I'm just finished. I'm going to start a Terminator 2," and he was just very accommodating, very friendly.
Yeah,
So
I
I
think
don't know. Maybe on the set it's just different.
yeah, yeah.
I don't
I
know.
think people
People
are
are complicated.
yeah, yeah. People are different on and off set. Directors for sure, where there's a lot of pressure going on. Um uh but yeah, yeah. Anyway, okay. What other notable films do we have here?
Let's talk about Rob Bottin kill effects. So I've
Okay.
got them. Um, and fantastic puppets like Witches of Eastwick and Inner Space. But I wanted to talk about Fatal Attraction
Oh yeah.
and Bugsy. Although Bugsy's in the 90s,
Yeah, what
but
about RoboCop too?
and RoboCop, because okay, let's talk RoboCop because that's right in the 80s. But there's an animatronic kill puppet of course, Peter Weller in RoboCop. That was really they just don't do that anymore, especially with digital. But excuse me, it's so cool that they would go to that extent to create an effect like that when it
Mm-hmm.
could have easily just been a squib or whatever. But they accommodated Rob, and so they did that on RoboCop and Total Recall. No, excuse me, Bugsy and Fatal Attraction.
So
In Fatal Attraction,
what were the effects?
in what those last two movies,
What
Fatal Attraction and Bugsy.
the ones that they used the animatronics for?
Yeah, it so at the beginning of Fatal Attraction, there's a kill with an ice pick, and Rob had created an animatronic double of the actor who's been tied to the bedposts,
Mm-hmm.
and he gets struck in the face and the chest with this ice pick, and I think it was a mechanical hand that would deliver the points of contact accurately
Really?
every time, and the blood. It's an incredible effect.
Huh.
When I think about it, I'm like, that had to have been so hard because once that ice pick enters the foam latex, it's been breached and blood and everything. It's almost like I can't see that there'd be room for a second take.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Bugsy, someone had just posted this on, I think, in Search for Rob Bottin or whatever, the Facebook group. But there's a shot of um the actor, oh my goodness,
Warren
Warren
Beatty.
Beatty,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the death scene of Bugsy Malone. So it's at the
Mm-hmm.
very end of the movie, and he gets shot in the chest, and that's just normal squibs. He sits down on the couch. He knows he's about to die, but he's still alive. And then there's a shot to the head that goes through his eye. Well,
That's
that was an
right.
animatronic double. So
Wow.
it just moves and it has all this movement, and then on cue can burst, a blood effect through the eye
Hmm.
and 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 uh, and react accordingly.
It looks great.
And it's really cool. If from what even from
I
what you
know
could
I've
see in
seen it.
the movie,
Yeah, I can't remember though.
it jerks and there's a big spew, and it's like you could tell. Okay, that's a little bit more than just a squib,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I think it's so cool that they allowed Rob to do that. And so back to RoboCop. Yeah, so that's the Peter Weller fake body when he gets, Murphy gets shot in the head.
Mm. Ah.
And so that was a whole, it could vibrate and it could sit up and reel its head back and grimace. And then,
Wow.
the timing was that the gun would go off and the brain matter would eject simultaneously, timed
Mm.
perfectly. And then you'd hit the ground. It'd collapse. It was rigged to where it could just collapse and hit the ground.
Mm.
And so a very elaborate effect for something really, really quick. And in the special edition of RoboCop, you actually see the camera pan around as the fake body is moving and looks forward just before it gets shot. And then the
Wow.
camera moves behind the head. Clarence Boddicker shoots the gun, and the bullet exits the back of the head, and he collapses. And so it's incredibly elaborate.
Wow.
They didn't use that shot in the theatrical cut,
Damn.
and they kind of didn't really need to, but it's still so cool that they did it.
Yeah.
That Rob was allowed to create that. And you know how cool that'd be to just kind of test in the shop and work
Oh
that out.
yeah.
and the Bugsy puppet. I just and just that Fatal Attraction. I think I saw a casting of the Fatal Attraction face, and it was really well done. But
We did a
anyways,
bo- oh, sorry. We
oh,
did a
just
body like that for the Jackal with Jack Black. His whole body got blown apart. The movie, it
oh,
was like a remake of The Day of the Jackal.
Jack Black.
Yeah, Jack Black.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and his head comes off, his whole body comes apart, and
So
it's
so you guys tested that in the shop and everything, and how did you
yeah.
do that?
It was all like pneumatic,
Oh,
I
okay, yeah, yeah,
think, and
yeah.
it
That
all
makes
went
sense.
back together really nicely, and it was a really
Oh,
realistic, fake head of him, and I
yeah.
painted it, and
Oh, what kind of
silicone.
gore and viscera did you put in it?
Can't remember. I can't remember. I don't think I was even on. Oh, I was on set for it. I just can't even remember, man.
Yeah.
So long ago. The only thing I
Well,
remember was Jack Black was very nice,
he's
but
young. He
not,
must have been really young or something at the
yeah,
time.
not wacky at all. Did never cracked a smile.
Huh.
Very nice. Same with Chris Elliott. Both guys were very like, didn't laugh, didn't make jokes. You think these guys are going to be wacky guys. He seemed like a really serious guy, and he was just
Huh.
talking about music. Jack Black. I think we talked about this on another episode, but anyway, go on.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, the pneumatic thing was what they used on RoboCop for the hand too, that gets shot
Mm.
and blasted, so you
Hmm.
could reassemble it. So that's a smart way to go, and
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I know on
But
Taxi Driver was like a wax hand, I
oh,
think,
that's right.
with
Yeah,
squibs maybe in it,
yeah.
because this hand gets blown. One hand
And
gets stabbed, and then the other one
the
kind of
other one
gets
gets blown.
blown apart.
Yeah, yeah. But RoboCop. So that came out in '86,
Mm.
and that was exhilarating, and I think that was kind of groundbreaking as well,
Oh
as
yeah,
far as just suit construction and
yeah,
stuff.
amazing suit. Yeah, it was interesting to see. Rob's had a range. He could kind of do anything you could throw at him.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily think Rob would be like a robot suit guy, but he did this amazing robot suit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's real quick.
Legend.
Legend. Yeah, how could we forget that?
How are we going to cover everything?
Um, okay, you start. Legend.
No, I don't know. What were you were gonna go on to something. What were you gonna say?
Not as good as Legend.
Okay, yeah, we can't
Okay.
leave Legend out, but I don't know if you worked with Rob, so you may have seen a lot of this stuff in person, but I forget the name of that devil. What's that demon? The
Darkness.
darkness. That was just a insane Rob Bottin makeup. The huge horns. I still doesn't seem possible to do that with a makeup to me. I don't know
It
how
went
they
through
did it.
it went through a lot of iterations from what I can tell. He had a storage area in his shop in Azusa that was in the back of the warehouse. This shop was an old auto mechanics shop
Hmm.
that he transformed into an effects shop. And in the back, where some of the supplies were, you go up these stairs, and there's like this attic kind of room, and it was stored with a bunch of stuff. And I remember I got to go up there once, and I saw a maquette of one of the iterations of Legend, and it was a version where the horns are smaller,
Hmm.
but the eyes were extended forward, so they had animatronic eyes. They were going to play
Wow.
with animatronic eyes, kind of like in the Guillermo del Toro movie, where that character that DDT did the effects that was so cool. It had animatronic eyes and big horns.
Oh, the
And
pan, the
yeah,
pan.
Pan's Labyrinth.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that was Pan, I think it
Yeah.
was.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so this was he had explored a version of that for
Hmm.
Darkness. And then it eventually I guess they wanted the horns larger and larger and larger, and just the practicality of it, and perfect solution to the problem just with what he ended up with. But I did see a wax casting of that makeup and those horns, which are incredibly big.
Yeah, how did they do that? There were
Just
must have been some
thin
thing.
vacuform.
Oh,
Yeah,
vacuform. Okay.
as far as I can tell, but it's a very lightweight, thin material. And yeah, and so I do have I have to spread the critiques around. I do have one criticism of Legend,
Hmm.
and that's of Blix. That on one side of Blix that was inspired by Keith Richards, it didn't quite work. I thought some of the forms and stuff were a little bit um, crude.
Hmm.
Other than that, the other side of Blix I really like.
Hmm.
And then of course, Meg Mucklebones I think is just stunning work, and
Yeah.
Darkness is stunning. And though just those two makeups alone, I think are yeah, some of the best ever.
Yeah. I remember that's a movie I got to see again too. I really haven't seen that one in forever. I remember Darkness having like no skin texture.
No.
Like pretty smooth.
Well, and it's not even smooth because if you looked at, we talked about this before, but Henry Alvarez sculpted that.
Mm-hmm.
And so his technique was a lot of the loop tool
Mm-hmm.
and just refining, refining, and refining. And that was Rob's process. So I don't even think that any of the sculpting had skin texture. It was all
Wow.
forms. So yeah, Darkness didn't have any pore texture or anything, and it didn't need it really.
Right.
It was so
Yeah.
dramatic. It's so dramatic that your eyes are gonna just follow those beautiful proportions.
It just seems
And
like it would be hard to
detail.
blend stuff off.
Well, in some shots you could tell, you could see the edges.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But in stills, but I think it looks pretty good in the movie as far as the blending.
Mm-hmm.
But that makeup, perfect actor again to find because
Yeah.
Tim Curry's got that wonderful mouth that has that wonderful smile shape
Mm-hmm.
where you see both sets of teeth and then those big eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Just striking features, and he's the perfect person for that. And yeah, it's I was disappointed in Legend as far as a movie, but
Mm-hmm.
visually and the makeups, it's stunning. And
Yeah.
I love Tangerine Dream, and so the music and everything. But I think they had to. It was originally going to be much more epic in scale,
Mm-hmm.
and so the behind the scenes of Legend, it was supposed the original screenplay was something akin to Lord of the Rings,
Oh wow.
and so it just kind of got whittled down into what it is now,
Mm.
and so the plot suffers.
Mm.
And so it's just kind of some set pieces.
Right.
But my goodness, some of the best sets ever built.
Yeah.
And then to put those makeups in there. So just that combination of Ridley Scott and Rob Bottin.
Yeah.
Oh my hell. That's aesthetic heaven right there.
Yeah. God, I can't comment on it. I haven't seen it in so long, but I do remember feeling like it was more style over substance, more visual
Yes,
over story,
it was totally, totally. And yeah, but Darkness is so stunning because, we've talked about this before, but Rob really focused on outline.
Mm.
So if you look at Darkness, it's the best example I can think of outline being the dominant part of the design. It's like the priority number one because the design is those 3-foot horns
Yeah.
and then that chin and then
Mm-hmm.
it has a hump.
Right.
So all of these things are kind of help balance out those horns because if he didn't have the hump, he'd look forward heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if he didn't have a long chin, it wouldn't work with those horns,
Mhm.
And yeah, outline. Just and then the primary forms, secondary, whatever. So he didn't need to have detail.
Yeah.
It really did not need it.
Yeah.
And I love that he chose almost like a conservative approach for the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't go because it kind of went. It goes from drama to subtle.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have, he could have made the teeth really big
Right.
to maybe, with the thinking of like having the chin and stuff, everything to counterbalance the horns,
Mm.
but he didn't, and it worked, and yeah, just incredible.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the 80s. It's like it's there's so many different effects films during the 80s. It's kind of like everything learned from the 60s and 70s. Just a few shows, relatively speaking, was all kind of implemented in the 80s and pushed to the extreme, because I'm trying to think like what are the historic boundary pushing effects films, and there's like a kind of a ton of them. There's of course The Thing, American Werewolf, The Howling, but there was like everything in between was kind of doing it too. You know what I mean? It's like everyone was doing it during that decade. Everyone was just kind of like, I mean, think about the difference from the 70s to the 80s as far as effects in movies. It's just huge. There's so many effects films in the 80s. It's crazy. It's like I can't even.
If you don't mind, let me just kind of go through my list real quick.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm going to kind of comment on what I've written because, okay, like real quick on my list, I have Friday the 13th, and I put Tom introduces splatter. And then The Elephant Man, a groundbreaker. It transcends Chris Tucker. Altered States, another groundbreaker. The Howling, another groundbreaker. American Werewolf London, groundbreaker, like what you're saying. Videodrome, groundbreaker, no, but interesting because he meets Cronenberg. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Chris Wallace, those melting heads are iconic.
Yeah.
So let's say groundbreaking. Cat People, Tom Perman's transformation. Interesting, just interesting. No, it's not maybe.
Yeah, it was maybe not a groundbreaker,
but not a groundbreaker. Poltergeist, Craig Reardon, fun. We reference that. The Fly, Chris Wallace shines. The Thing, groundbreaker. Legend, groundbreaker. Greystoke, groundbreaker.
Yep, for
and
sure.
And then Heartbeeps, Stands, gelatin makeups. Those are interesting. I don't know if I'd say groundbreaker, but they were sure good.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Ghostbusters, Steve Johnson.
Yep.
Shines on that.
Yeah.
And that's one. And then Amadeus, we talked about Amadeus. Oscar winning Dick Smith finally gets an Oscar. Totally deserves it. Monster Squad, Stan, he's starting to get in a role in this period because Monster Squad, Alien Nation, and Pumpkinhead, Predator, and
Predator.
Predator was a groundbreaker because that suit was fantastic. And it was kind of like Monster Squad was the first to kind of introduce that Steve Wang, Matt Rose aesthetic. But it really culminated with Predator because when Steve, Matt's brilliant kind of sculpting, but Steve really did something interesting when he introduced his style of painting.
Yeah.
That Hell Comes to Frogtown. I mean, I remember looking at those paintings, that paint style, and just going, that is mind blowing.
He's the first guy to do that, as far as I know.
He really kind of elevated the art of painting. And so then I have, there's Predator, Fright Night, Steve Johnson, Randy Cook.
Yeah.
Amazing. Creepshow. I think Creepshow's probably my favorite of Tom Savini.
Yeah, he did all kinds of cool stuff on that one.
Really cool. Beast Within we talked about. Coming to America. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Rick's work. Beetlejuice got the Oscar over Coming to America, but Beetlejuice was fun, but I kind of resent it getting the Oscar over Coming to America.
You know how Oscars are. It's like I was looking at the Oscars earlier, and it's like there's certain movies that there's no way. There's always a movie that's like it's no way did that have greater makeup. No way.
No. And so there's it's so political.
Yeah.
Then I have Coming to America. Okay, Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice has some great stuff in it, though.
Yeah, it does. Okay, RoboCop, Gremlins 2. Blob, which I think you guys did a wonderful job. Platoon.
Oh, yeah.
I really like that makeup on Tom Berenger.
Yep.
And I think what's so neat is it introduces Gordon J. Smith. And I love Gordon Smith.
Yeah,
and I think we're going to have to talk about him at some point because he really his contribution to the effects industry.
When we get in the 90s,
valuable.
I think we're gonna have to do
I do
part
too.
3 because
let me just finish
Yeah,
this
yeah,
real
keep
quick. So,
going.
Quest for Fire,
Yeah,
Stucker.
yeah. That was
Evil
a good
Dead
one.
1 and 2,
Mm-hmm.
goofy fun, Mark Shostrom, KMB.
That's right.
Aliens, Stan transcended with that. Nightmare on Elm Street, David Miller, Kevin Yeager. I thought what David Miller did was very appropriate, but I loved what Kevin Yeager did as far as just the sculpting
Oh
and the
yeah,
design. He refined it to a very interesting place.
yeah.
I love what Kevin Yeager
I
did.
thought Kevin Yeager's Freddy was the best. Was
Yeah, I do
the
too.
best version of him.
Scanners, we talked about Twilight Zone, we talked about Harry and the Hendersons. That's almost like that could, my goodness.
Yeah.
It's just, and then Trick or Treat. I want to mention Trick or Treat.
Trick or Treat. That's one I didn't. That's a movie that I know people love, but I missed it, and so I didn't get to see it until.
It's not that great of a movie.
Okay.
But I would stare at that demon puppet that Kevin Yeager made, that Alec Gillis painted, and I think Dave Kinlan.
Oh! I'm thinking of it. I'm thinking of a different Trick or Treat. There was another.
Okay, no, this was the one in the 80s.
Yeah, that Kevin Yeager snake thing, demon was amazing with the tongue.
Amazing.
Didn't it have a big tongue?
Yeah, it had a big tongue, and
I remember seeing pictures of that and thinking that was incredible.
I did too. I stared at that picture for over and over again because I just thought it looked so good.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Kevin's sculpting. Kevin's an incredible sculptor, and that was evident in that puppet. And then I have Reanimator has some good stuff. Day of the Dead, Tom Savini, Greg Nicotero's introduced, and we talked about one of my favorite Rob Bottin effects is in two movies that kind of go overlooked. Witches of Eastwick. I love that Jack Nicholson thing that goes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Rage at the end. That puppet, I would love. Yes. I didn't get to see the one that I like so much, but I did see the long neck Jack Nicholson at Rob Shop, and that was very cool.
Yeah.
But I loved Inner Space. Do you remember those heads?
I just saw that recently. That was so crazy.
Those Chango heads.
Yeah.
Those are Chango heads, and they were so cool. And then I have Scrooge we mentioned, and then we mentioned Fatal Attraction, and then just a shout out to Norma Cabrera for Scarecrows. That came out in like 1988. I was a lonely college student, and I was so happy to rent that from the video store. And I remember going back to the apartment. I was alone. It was autumn, and the mood was right, and I'm watching Scarecrows, and on the back cover of the VHS cassette, it mentions Norma Cabrera, and he's a protege of Rick Baker, and the simple joys of being a monster kid, an 18-year-old monster kid. And I remember just in heaven, and it was a dumb movie, but it was Norma Cabrera.
Yeah,
and it was Rick Baker.
I don't think I've ever even seen it.
Baker, and it's forgetful.
Yeah,
but his Norma stuff's good, and so anyway, that's more of a nostalgic, warm comfort food of a movie for me, just because I was just in the throes of makeup effects and just so cool. But I think that's my list.
Yeah, that's like that kind of covers.
Dick Tracy. Did we mention? Dick Tracy?
Isn't that 1990? I think that gets into the 90s.
Maybe, but it's worth mentioning John Caglione and Doug Trexler.
Yeah.
I really liked John Caglione's sculpting. I think Chud, those Chud effects.
Oh, right. Man. Yeah, no, he also did one of the Amityville movies.
That's right.
Really
Amityville
cool makeups.
Really cool.
I think it was 1990.
Dick Tracy.
Yeah, 1990.
Yeah, 1990.
Mitch worked on that. Mitch sculpted on that.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He did work for Caglione for a while. He did he worked on that movie with James Caan and Bette Midler. He did some old age makeups on that. That's right. Yeah, that was a John Caglione movie in Drexler. But that's all I've got right now. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's just too, I didn't realize this was going to be such a...
There's almost too much. The 80s was almost too much.
Well, I mean, I'm down
overwhelmingly cool.
I know. I'm down for a part 3 if you are. It doesn't have to be next Monday. But if you're up for it, we could schedule whenever you can.
I am. Let's maybe schedule because I really want to talk about, you know, like Jacob's Ladder.
I know. We got to talk about. There's so much cool stuff in the '90s too. A Darkman. I worked on that. That's
and
pretty.
I want to hear Darkman.
You worked on a ton. Benjamin Buttons. Men in
Black.
Men in Black. Men in Black 2.
And I want to talk about Tom and Alec at ADI because they started going in the '90s. And so yeah, and then maybe we could kind of slow it down and just, delve a little deeper into these things because I really want to talk about Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah, me too.
That was hugely influential.
Same here.
So,
real quick before we end this one, we can kind of get some feedback and see if there's any important things we left out too, and maybe address on the third one. But what year did you start working in the business and
in the industry?
When did we meet? What show was it?
I think we met in 1994-5 on Warriors of Virtue.
Okay.
And so I had just come off of Mission Impossible at Rob's, and
that's right.
And so you guys hired me on Warriors of Virtue, and so I think that was around. It was just before I got hired at Rick's. So that was a wonderful time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we can get into that when we get into the '90s because that's actually in the '90s. I was just curious.
Irwindale? Yeah. Where was that shop? Where was Tony's shop? Was it Irwindale?
I think it was Monrovia. He moved to Irwindale later. I don't know. Maybe that was the Irwindale shop.
I think it was Monrovia. I forgot because you live in Monrovia now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just up the street.
Up the street. Yeah. Well, now I'm a little further away, but I lived like walking distance from the shop. I lived on the same street, and I still drove to work every day, and I was still late every day. I mean, it was literally like 2 blocks up, and I was still late and drove my car into work every day.
Oh my goodness! And Fritz was just a little boy. He was just a cute little kid to come in the shop. Oh yeah. That was cool. But yeah, I want to hear about Darkman because I do love those Darkman makeups, and I want to hear about. Was Liam Neeson? Was he good to work with?
Oh yeah, he was so cool.
Oh,
super cool. Yeah. So, okay. Let's just do it. Let's just end it and do a part 3 when we'll schedule after I stop recording. So because we're at almost 3 hours.
Wow.
2 hours and 50
I know I'm
minutes.
feeling a little bit dizzy.
Okay.
But it's great.
Thank you everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back with part 3 and tackle the history of makeup effects, hopefully, and only one more. All right. So say goodbye to everybody.
You. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.